Hey, it's your show.
It's time. All right, everybody. So welcome to episode 16 of the Hype. This is the second episode that I've done with Moses. Episode 15 was the last one I did, of course, with Moses, and in that episode we kind of talked about. We actually kind of previewed and did predictions for FACEIT and ESWC. We also talked a bit about some of the recent NA events like CEVO Land, kind of reflected on that, what that meant for NACS. And we also had some other like discussions and debates about NACS as well. I encourage you. I know some people don't like to go back and look at all the episodes because they feel like it's worthless to because oh well, that event already happened, so the discussion about it doesn't matter anymore. But part two of the last episode actually talked a lot about still very prevalent and relevant topics in NACS, including like practice culture and things like that. So I would really recommend if you want to like get some in-depth discussion about NACS to check out at least part two of the VOD of episode 15 because you'll get a lot from it. Now, with this episode, originally what I was going to do with this episode was we were supposed to just reflect on what happened at FACEIT and ESWC, and then we were supposed to do our DreamHack winner, like group predictions, and then that was going to be it, right? It was going to be a nice little, easy flow discussion, but a bunch of stuff happened between last episode and now, which is obviously like a lot more important to NACS maybe. And so we're gonna go through a lot of like current and recent news items that have really had a huge impact, I think, on North American Counter Strike going forward. So, hey, phone call. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and mute the phone. Anyway, sorry about that. But anyway, so that's kind of what we're gonna do. We're still gonna talk about DreamHack Winner a bit, and in our discussion about some of the NA teams, we will talk a bit about FACEIT and ESWC. But that's basically where we're going. So I actually want to start off like our first topic discussion is going to be all of the recent NA roster changes. Okay, now obviously there's the big one, iBUYPOWER, but I kind of want to build up to that with some smaller discussion first. I think we can fly by the first topics pretty quickly. Okay, does that sound good? Because I think iBUYPOWER's discussion is going to transition really well to Cloud9 and FACEIT and ESWC. So I'd rather start off small and work our way up. So the first one I want to talk about is, of course, the roster situation with Denial. So, of course, Denial lost Nitro because he went to iBUYPOWER. We'll talk about that later. So they had an empty gap on the team, and they decided to pick up Anger. First of all, Moses, what do you think about this? And then I'll kind of chime in with my thoughts.
I think Anger, um, he's a really good player. We've seen him perform really well with iBUYPOWER and even with Cloud9 at the ESCA lands. Um, and I think he's kind of been scapegoated a couple times when both those teams dropped him. Probably more for personality issues than any performance issues. So for them, that's an obvious boost. And from the tournaments that we've seen them at, like CEVO, where we talked about some of their deficiencies seem to occur with like experience and tactics and strategy. I think playing at such a high level for so long, um, if Todd can find a way to have an input, if Anger can have input beyond just his fragging, if he can kind of help that team um, in ways outside of like just straight up fragging, which he's known for. He's just a fragger. He's really good at it. So he's going to need, I think, to kind of use some of experience to help that team kind of get to the next level in terms of teamwork and strategy. Um, and I think he can have a big impact for them going forward into their land tournaments. He brings a lot of experience and a lot of you know stable land performances.
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% agree in the sense that I think the Nile made a great move. They got a lot of value out of this pickup, I think. Like you said, Anger's a great player. He's a great fragger. He also brings a lot of experience to the table. He has more lane experience than probably the rest of the team combined at this point, if you look at the rest of the roster of Denial. So he definitely brings like a strong mentality to the team, great fragging ability to the team. And as far as the scapegoating thing is, yeah, I've kind of seen that too. Though I would ask you, like, and this maybe will be like a deeper conversation about Anger just a little bit. You said personality issues. What is that? Because I've always seen Todd as like a pretty nice guy, but you're not the first person to mention personality as being an issue. Like I think some of the complexity guys, like I think when I interviewed Sean Garrett, he said personalities didn't mesh with Anger. Dave said the exact same thing. Recently, actually, after he got kicked from the team, he kind of opened up about some of the earlier iBUYPOWER roster changes, and he talked about Anger, and he said kind of the same thing. Is there some type of secret out there that the community's not aware of, that like anger has this like effect on teams that's bad personality wise or something, or
No, I don't think. No, it's not a secret. But I mean, I think when you look at Cloud9 and the personality that those five guys have, even during live matches, um, they almost kind of seem like like a clique at like the high school lunchroom. They're goofy, they're joking with each other. They don't have that typical environment to their in-game personalities, and that can be hard to fit in. And I mean, for that, I can definitely see it. I think with iBUYPOWER, it was more. Um, I mean, everyone knows Daze is a tough guy to get along with, and you kind of have to really sacrifice maybe some of the things you want to say, or kind of the things you want to. You got to pick and choose your battles with him. It almost seems like sometimes, and I think that was a big part of it in their personality clash. And also, I think that he was probably just looking for a roster spot to bring Steele on board. I think that was also part of it.
right. I can see you there. One thing I have also heard about anger, though, and this is like a concern that other pro teams have had, and I don't know if this is true or not, because I was kind of curious. I want to get your take on it, because obviously, Moses, if you don't know, we didn't really do introductions formally, but he was on the last episode. He used to play for Elevate, which is one of the North American pro teams that are actually, heading to ESCA land and stuff like that, and he's also now an analyst and color commentator for ESCA TV. But I've also heard, like, Anger is such a great fragger. He does so well, but it almost seems like sometimes in high pressure situations that he might fall off a bit. Like, I don't want to call it like necessarily a choking factor, but some people have said, like Days on his stream, that, Anger's a great player, but when you really need him, like intense moments, sometimes he kind of mentally breaks down. So do you think that this is true? And if so, does it have an effect, or what do you think there?
Well, I mean, of course it's true to an extent because I mean that's just the nature of high pressure situations. But I mean, you could say that about just about any player. We've seen Hiko have some tough tournaments recently, and you could say he buckled under some pressure, and you can say nothing has not lived up to his hype when in the pressure moments, and you could say the same thing about some of the iPad Power guys. Days and Steels weren't always performing to their level, and Skadoodle especially has underperformed in the past. So I mean, to say that's an excuse, I mean, yeah, I mean, you need the players who are going to step up in those situations, but I don't think that he did it. He underperformed frequently enough to really warrant that as a reason. I think you look at, just what comes to mind off the top of my head is when Abba Power beat Very Games in their first ESCA title victory. Anger made some great plays in the last like 3 rounds to kind of to win them those rounds to win them that championship. So he's performed under pressure, and he's also struggled under pressure. But everyone has, and I just don't think that would be the major reason for them to consider dropping him.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking this is because I'm not trying to put Anger under a bus. I actually agree with you. I think he has been scapegoated at times, and I think that people do like kind of blow out of proportion some of these situations where they feel as if he's cracked under pressure or whatever. But it just kind of always blew my mind that we saw Complexity do so well at the last ESCA land when Anger was a part of that team, and it just seems like Anger always winds up getting the short end of the stick. Like he performs pretty well. Like he performed well for iBUYPOWER at ESCA land when they beat Titan, and then he performed well like Cole throughout that entire run, and then yet he still gets like let off the team at the end anyway, to make room for
Yeah,
somebody else. And it's almost like, I mean, I think Complexity always had it in their mind that they weren't ever going to keep Anger on a permanent basis. That it was that was an awkward situation to begin with. They were thinking they were going to keep using Swag. All of a sudden, Swag's gone. Anger's like the best available now, but down the road, obviously, we probably want to make some different decisions. So it was like Anger was always going to be a temporary like fill in there, but I just can't help but feel like that guy's gotten so unlucky in the pro scene because he is really good and he performs pretty well, but then he still winds up being the guy left behind, so to speak. I don't know. It's like it's been awkward to me. I don't know. What do you?
yeah, no, he's definitely got the short end a couple times now, and it's not really. I'm not going to say it's not warranted because obviously, as a team game, the team that's dropping him has to make that decision, and they obviously saw something that they thought was um, going to separate their goals from what Anger could provide. But yeah, I mean, it hasn't been performance wise. I don't think in these last two situations, it hasn't been because of his performance. It's been because of outside reasons that aren't necessarily always under his control.
Right. Now, here's the other part of this whole thing with denial and anger is I think that you good?
Hang on a second, Best. Yeah, hang on.
No problem. Well, while he's really quickly going away, what I was gonna say was is I think that, and he'll hear me as he comes in. I think that the other side of this argument about the other side of the argument about denial is like I think denial got great value out of picking up anger because of the experience and fragging ability he brings to the team, but I almost wonder if Anger made a poor decision. Like, I know he really wanted to probably go like compete at major lands, and like he's guaranteed ESCA land with denial. And I guess like this MLG upcoming event, maybe they're gonna try to qualify for that and have a chance of qualifying for that. But like when you were looking at TST, and obviously this has changed because Volcano has also left now too. But when Anger was making his decision to stay or go to denial, Volcano was still a part of that roster. You had Adren, you had some of these other guys, and I think TST though they came second in Premier, I think they'll probably still get moved up to Invite for next season, and they'll be CVOP next season as well. I'm pretty sure now after the placement tournament where they won last night. Do you not think that TST had more potential down the line, like in the future, than Denial will have based on the roster that they had? Or do you
You
think
mean with
Denial
Volcano and
actually?
Anger?
Yeah, Volcano,
Uh,
Anger, Adren. I felt like that core, even with Pex, who's kind of like knocking some rust off. I mean, that core four players from Dynamic Counter-Strike Source days, the chemistry is obviously there. Do you not think that there was more potential there for Anger, like down the line? Not in the short term. Obviously, like the team's not going to ESCA land. Denial is,
I'm,
so cool. But yeah,
they
what do you
they
think?
were, but I think that TST was never going to be a team who is going to look at a lot of traveling to events and competing at events outside of ESCA. And maybe like in ETS land here or there. But I think Anger just kind of saw better potential. I don't think he was quite ready because Adren's whole thing was he kind of wasn't going to be traveling. He wanted to kind of step back from the competitive professional scene and just kind of play for fun. And Volcano's just kind of getting back into Go, and Pex is just kind of getting back into Go. And I think Anger just saw a better opportunity to be more involved now versus that build-up. And Denial's probably the third best team in North America. You could even, I mean, with iBUYPOWER changes, it's kind of a weird top like Cloud9's obviously first, but it's kind of like the next two are kind of weird. We have to see how iBUYPOWER plays. But I mean, Denial's a good opportunity, and they have a sponsor who's talked about being willing to send them to events. They got sent to SIVO, but he wants to send them overseas. And I think Anger just saw that as a better opportunity for getting involved in professional level competitions as soon as he could.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, and I understand what you mean, but with the whole Adren thing. But recently, Adren has spoken about wanting to get serious again, and talking about trying to get involved at the MLG event and things like that down the line. So it seemed like the mentality was starting to shift to be a bit more serious, but maybe it still wasn't serious enough for Anger. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
it's a lot more than just like, hopping on to play with five guys. Like to compete in this professional level, it's a lot of time spent in servers as a team, not even playing anyone, just going over, situationals and going over how you want to play a different location. And, a lot of guys when they come back and they're like, all right, I want to get involved in competition again and they want to get involved in the professional level, they say that, but they don't have that motivation to do all the boring um, busy work that it takes to get that good, and they end up not succeeding. And maybe that was something. I mean, I don't know if that was TST's issue, but maybe that could have been one thing that Anger might have seen. Not willing to kind of put in that dirty work that he's willing to put in.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was an attitude issue. But let's talk about the other side of this, which is, of course, Volcano joining Elevate. Now, to my knowledge, I mean, they obviously know each other very well, but I don't think they really scrimmed together or anything before they made this decision, like, at least recently. I know I think, like, Elevate was actually, you'll know this way more than me because you actually know those guys really well. But it seemed like Elevate was actually scrimming with some other guys and considering to pick up somebody else, and then just all of a sudden they were like, nah, we'll just pick up Volcano. So what can you tell me about this roster swap? I would feel like you would know something about this.
It just happened at a point where no matter who they were going to get, they weren't going to have a lot of time to prepare. Like 3 weeks or maybe a month before the event is what they'd have to prepare with their new player. And I know everyone who played with me and Matt and Tyler, everyone who played in that era, like way back when Sal was playing in 1.6, Volcano was always that player that you wanted to play with. He's just so fundamentally good, performs under pressure, just consistent. really strong player. And knowing that they weren't going to have that great a prep time, I think they just kind of took a safe option. They probably could have picked someone who was just a very impressive fragger online and was able to really improve them in these online matches and online practices. But they kind of they're playing for the land, so they picked up someone who they knew what they were going to get. They knew he was going to play well. They knew he wasn't going to choke. And then that's just kind of the route they took.
Right. So how? Because I mean, Elevate has always been considered a team in North America, at least, that when it comes to a LAN setting, they've always been kind of considered, top three, top four in NA. Obviously, online, teams like the announcements of their teams probably are held to a higher standard than Elevate. But Elevate has always been kind of that sleeper team that has a lot of LAN experience, and when they get to a LAN setting, they can sometimes perform. I think the last big time you can remember this was not the last ESA LAN because they weren't even there, but the one before that. They were the next best NA team placement wise outside of like complexity and iBUYPOWER at the time. And so that's just kind of a testament to the fact that at the LAN setting they can perform really well against the other NA rosters. So with that said, how do you think Elevate's fares now with a player like Volcano in the lineup, and based on the rest of the lineup that they do have, do you think that they can actually do something with this lineup?
I mean, it honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if once again after the CSCA, they were right behind iBUYPOWER and Cloud9 in terms of NA teams on land. But I mean, when it comes to European teams, I do not believe they're going to be able to beat a European team. Maybe like the fourth seed, who is the fourth European seed? Now that
I
I'm thinking
don't
about it.
know I don't know the actual seeding order because I know there was teams that filled in for other teams, but we know Fnatic is coming, we know Virtus Pro is coming, we know Mouse Sports is coming,
Okay, if the
and
division stands on the ESCA is right, Titans fourth, and there's Mouse Sports. I could see, maybe them upsetting Mouse Sports on land, maybe, but I mean they're not going to be Dignitas, they're not going to be Fnatic, and they're not going to be Titan.
well, Diggs is not going. I think it's Virtus Pro is
Okay,
who
well
it
they're
goes
not going to
for.
be Virtus Pro either. So,
Yeah. I got what you're saying. Yeah. My other
but
question would be then: do you think Volcano's in this team for the long haul, or is this just a help us out for these recent events and then we'll see from there type thing?
I mean I'm not sure. I haven't talked to them about that at all. So it's very possible. But I also know because I was talking to Matt when this Warden when this all happened. Who you guys going to get? Who you guys replacing Desi with? Who you taking to ESCA? And we were just throwing out some names. And I told him I was like, talk to Volcano because I know he was planning on going anyways. He's down in Austin with Heather, and Heather's going to be there, so he was going to be at the LAN anyways. So I'm not sure what the plans are for after that.
I got you. Just have to see what happens. So with that all said, is the stream team basically done for now as far as being an NA team that can have potential? I think now their lineup is going to be something like Adren, Pex, Statutory Ape, Cullo, and Yayo. I think probably after Anger leaves because he's been helping them
Uh,
in placement for
yeah, I
CVP.
mean, I'm sure they're still going to play this season. They all like playing, and they're moderately successful. I know Dren's really successful with his stream, so I don't see any reason why they'd stop playing.
Well, yeah, they're going to keep
But I
playing, but
don't,
do they
I
have
don't think
potential
they're going to
to?
have much of an impact.
Okay, I
I
got
would
you saying.
be surprised if I was the ESEA, I wouldn't move them up to invite, and I say that being friends with the majority of those guys. But just those roster changes, you can't just move up a team who got second place and they have two completely different players. That's a little crazy. So.
Well,
Um,
they have three returning.
Yeah, and that follows the roster rules, but just when you get to invite, it's just it's such a big deal that you have that chemistry and you have
Right.
that work, and to take two players off of it, I don't care if it follows the
Well,
roster rules.
I
I'm
take
saying
that.
if I was ESE, if I
Right,
was
I get what you're
if
saying.
I was able to do whatever I wanted with invite, I would not be moving them up.
Well, technically the only new player they got is Cullo because it was a six-man rotating roster with Yayo kind of filling in and out for Pex and stuff anyway. So really, I don't know. They kind of the four of the players they're using now are players that played significant amount of matches for them in ESCA last season. Even though, of
Okay.
course, Volcano and Anger was a part of all of those matches, and it was like the other guys were kind of rotating in and out, and now they're permanent fixtures on the team. It seems like really the only new face is actually Cullo. So yeah, I actually have no idea. I think they did rely on Anger and Volcano a lot, so I think they lost a lot of value, yeah, but I think, here's my point, I don't think they're making ESCA land next season or anything like that, but they might be fighting for, like, that mid-tier, like, mid of the pack type. I don't think they're going to be, like, bottom of the barrel Envi if they go to Envi. I think they would be
No, they
kind of
wouldn't be.
mid-tier. So at that point, they can at least, I like 8-8 record or something like that, I think is, like, pretty reasonable for the roster that they've shown so far. So, yeah, I just don't think they're a land contender anymore, but yeah, I was just kind of curious what you thought about TST going forward. So now it comes to the big one. All right, we've been building up to this. This is the most important, probably, part of the show that we'll have, which is our analysis of what happened with iBUYPOWER. So in case you've been living under a rock for the past 6 months, basically what has happened is that iBUYPOWER has always been seen as a team that does really well domestically, probably number one in NA because they always beat Cloud9 head-to-head, it seems. They've had stints of brilliance like Gfinity in Europe where they've shown that, hey, we can beat teams, but consistency has always been an issue. They've gotten knocked out of group play at every major, and so they step up and they go to FACEIT and go to ESWC. And FACEIT, they take second out of nowhere, beat LDLC in a best-of-3 to make it to the finals against Fnatic, which I think they were just like destined to lose. No one seems to be able to beat Fnatic right now. So crazy result there. Very good for them. Looked great. And then you looked at ESWC where they made it out of group play. They lost to Navi in the opening bracket round, but Navi's like a top 4 team in the world, and I mean it was a decently close series. So my point is it looked like iBUYPOWER had made progress. Finally, we're consistently placing top 8 in EU. You know, we made a final. That's actually still the best result any team's ever had in Europe. Like Cloud9's never made it past top 4, so you know that was a new milestone for NACS overseas, right? So progress, we're making progress, right? Well, all of a sudden, like, we get hit with a bombshell, like, almost literally as soon as they get back from ESWC, which is that dazed and Steel are out, and then they pick up desi pretty much right off the bat, and then there's kind of, like, some hesitancy on who their fifth's going to be. I think they were thinking about Freakazoid for a little while. There was probably some other discussions with other people as well. Obviously, no one from Cloud9 is available. They're at a boot camp, and they don't give a crap about what iBUYPOWER is doing right now. So basically, what they decided to do was pick up Nitro from Denial, which is why you had that whole Anger roster situation that we talked about already for a few minutes. And that's where we stand now. We have iBUYPOWER with Desi and Nitro in for Dazed and Steel. What the hell happened? I can tell you what Day said, and what Day said was he thinks it was an attitude thing. They didn't like his attitude. They didn't like that he was a bit aggressive or a bit too stern sometimes in the way that he handled the players in game. Steel apparently was on his way out the door anyway. He had already said he was going to quit after the major anyway, but I would tend to believe that once again, and I'm sure it was an attitude thing there as well that they wanted to get rid of Steel for. Thoughts, Moses? Initial thoughts before I'm sure we'll debate about this a bit, but what is your initial thoughts?
I thought this was so dumb. It's so dumb. And you know, Steele on his way out, he said over like 2 months ago he even wanted to be leaving. So you want to replace Steele, fine. You pick up Desi for Steele, that's an upgrade. Um, you know, even I consider Desi to be higher skilled than Steele, but even beyond that, just attitude and motivation wise, that's an upgrade in just pretty much every measure of it. Um, as far as Dazed, I thought dropping Dazed was the dumbest thing. It's just so unbelievable. That team is just they're in just such disarray right now, and they don't have a leader anymore, and they don't have a lot of time to prep, and it's just amazing to me that they decided to drop Steel and Dazed all at the same time. Like, you drop Steel, you go to these upcoming events, you go to DreamHack, you go to ESCA. After that, if you still want to drop Dazed, fine, do it. That's fine. But this team is just going to be such shit at these upcoming tournaments. It's unbelievable.
Okay, so I'm going to pretty much 100% agree with you after we've had some reflection. My initial reactions were a bit different, but I feel like I need to go back to my initial reactions so that we can actually have an argument here and make this show interesting. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a bit here, okay? But before I play devil's advocate, I want to point out a couple of things because I feel like you said some things that are very true, but people aren't going to believe you because they don't understand. So let me give you an example here with Desi, right? So Desi in for Steel. When you look at this on paper, maybe it's not how it actually played out. Maybe it wasn't like, oh, you know, Desi is Steel's direct replacement. It probably didn't play out like that. It probably just played out, we're letting go of these two guys and we're picking up a dude that we think has potential. So let me help you understand why Desi's actually probably a good pickup for iBUYPOWER. Let's go back to Manajumas, right? You have Desi and you have Shroud. Now, Shroud was obviously the more famous and more popular guy because of his streaming. People always thought he had sick aim. He had proven himself pretty well online for a while. And so he looked very, very attractive. When then you go to land with Manajumas, and that whole team didn't do well. I mean, they played Nip and Navi, got knocked out in 4 maps very, very quickly. So I don't think anybody necessarily expected them to upset a Navi or a Nip at that event anyway, but people were kind of wanting to see how Shroud would do at his first, like, major land. And he performed about neutral. He didn't do amazing, but he didn't do terrible. And so people were like, oh, well, maybe, I mean, yeah, he probably still has that potential. It was just not a good team environment, whatever. And Cloud9 took a gamble on this guy, and it's played out really well for them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, actually, when we talk more about Cloud9. So Shroud has really proven himself, and it turned out to be a great gamble for Cloud9. So Desi's the other element of this. He was playing alongside Shroud in the Strumas, and he's more of an aggressive rifle type role, whereas Shroud's a bit more passive, I would say. So it's a different role. But the point is he performed about the same as Shroud on that team online and at ESCA land. So he's the other guy that kind of got overshadowed from that team that did perform really well and showed potential. So as Cloud9 took a gamble on Shroud, iBUYPOWER's taking a gamble on Desi, which I think is totally fine. Now, maybe he will flop at DreamHack Winter, and maybe that wasn't a good decision, but I think Desi has showed promise, and like you said, he's very skilled. So I think that if we look at just this part of the roster move, forget Days for now, that's obviously huge, we'll get there, but this roster move makes total sense to me, actually.
I think it makes total sense to anyone. I don't think anyone's going to argue that this was a bad move to get Desi instead of Steel. No one in the right minds, at least, is going to argue that at all. So that, I mean, that was really good by iBUYPOWER. They just, went a little bit too far.
All right, so let's go to the Days thing then, because here's why I have to play devil's advocate to make this show interesting, because I don't just want to, like suck your EP and talk about how awesome an analyst you are, even though you are. And you're right, but I have to make this interesting, because I don't just want to blow past this topic now where we both say iBUYPOWER is dumb and then we move on to the next topic on the list. I want to spend some time here because it's important. Here's how I'm going to try to make this work. It's going to be really hard. So, with Dazed, right? Obviously, the reason why you think it's dumb that iBUYPOWER got rid of him is because if you look at the North American talent pool for in-game leading, you really only have like 2 really proven guys, which is going to be Sean Gares and then Dazed, like as actual tacticians. Of course, you had Simphis kind of in-game lead a bit there, but I mean, he wasn't. I mean, he's a really smart guy, but he was more of like a let's just run default and then we'll make some mid-round adjustments from there. There was no real actual set executions. There's a lot of freedom to all the players. There was a lot of mid-round adjusting, which I'm sure Sean Gares had a part in anyway. So when you look at North American in-game leaders, you probably just look at Dazed and Sean Gares for the most part when you're talking about like the elite level players. The big difference between the two, I think, is that Sean Gares has been somewhat criticized at times, even though recently he's done really well, that his fragging and skill level at fragging wasn't quite there, but his in-game leading was so great that it made up for it, basically. But then you look at Daze, and he's like the complete player, because not only is he an amazing in-game leader with his tactics, he's also a really skilled fragger in many cases. So getting rid of Daze looks really terrible then, because he was a super skilled in-game leader. You're never going to find another in-game leader as good as that's available right now, right? But on the other hand, is that pretty much your argument, Moses, do you think, or what most people's arguments would be as to why this is a bad decision? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if you want to...
No, I mean, that's the very basic. I mean, there's a lot of details that I could go into about it, but yeah.
Well, give us some info here.
Okay, well, Daze is he's flat out the best in-game leader in North America, and this is with everything in mind about how he's apparently hard to get along with. He wants the strats run his way. He's kind of a little bit of like one of the dictator in-game leaders. And I'm not going to say he's perfect because he has a lot of things, both strategically and personality-wise, I think he could work on and get better at. But they have AZK calling now. And I'm not saying that AZ Call doesn't have the knowledge to make good calls, but he does not have the personality within 3 weeks to get this team playing how he wants it to play. This is going to run into situations where they're going to look sloppy a lot of times because he's going to make a call and someone's going to get overly aggressive on a certain portion of the map and die, and then they're going to be playing 4-on-5, and then they have to make this mid-round decision, and they're not going to be used to being in that situation with this new caller. And it's going to be really frustrating for AZK because he's going to want to call strats, but someone on the other side of the map or someone's going to get picked off being undisciplined, and then it's just going to be just mentally, it's just kind of going to drag on him. And he's not the kind of person who's going to get on his teammates and yell at them to, focus, pay attention, be more disciplined. He's going to let it slide and just internalize it and take it. And that's not going to work at a major against the best teams in the world. The only way that this could ever possibly benefit them is Skadoodle just being unleashed. They need to just let him do whatever he wants, because you've seen in the past when he's struggled, you've seen Skadoodle. It seems like he's kind of had a tough time thinking about how he wants to play a certain situation and then how to play it within days tactics, how he wants the team to be playing. And you've seen him make a lot of really weird individual mistakes that just don't make any sense. And I think this freedom might help him, but as a team they're just going to struggle. So if Skadoodle doesn't just go apeshit these events, they're not going to do anything. And even if he does, they're going to have a tough time even just making it out of groups. And this isn't even to say anything bad about Nitro, because I don't think Nitro's a bad player. I think he has some potential. He's a really good fragger. He's a really strong rifler, but he's just gonna fly. He's getting thrown into the fire here. This is one of his first big major events now too, and he's going to be expected to perform. And not even the skill. I still think Daze is the better individual player, but I mean just has nothing to do with Nitro. It's just how do you give up every strategic. I can't even. I almost can't even put it into words. And it just after they have so much success, finally, I don't know what was going through their heads, by any means.
Let me try to. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm gonna try to give you some answers. So my guess is that they were gonna get rid of Daze and Steel no matter what the hell happened at FACEIT and ESWC, and those results had no weight on their mind. That's what I'm gonna think. I think that I think that whatever was happening as they were prepping for these events, and then everything that's happened in the past with them not making out of groups and things like that, I think that all built up together, that they probably already knew they were going to do this before they ever stepped foot to go to Europe for these past two events. And I think that the results, while they were incredible, and you would think that shows progress and that means they should be good now, I think that just didn't weigh on them at all. I think they already had their minds made up on what they wanted to do, like I said, before they ever stepped. That's the only logical explanation, because otherwise it makes no sense. So to me, it had to be a decision they already had made before they even left, but they knew they couldn't make a roster change.
Which is even worse. If that's your mindset going into a tournament, that you're going to be removing your strat caller after that event, like that's worse than the strat caller himself having a bad attitude. That's just terrible. Not to mention, they might want to remove him all they want, but two ESEA land victories, second at FACEIT, they're on the upswing. Before Dazed came along and they were, playing as Curse like that, those guys weren't winning anything. They were still doing the same thing, going across to Europe and just bombing out, or going to ESEA and bombing out. And now you finally have this strat leader who's getting you guys in the right direction. Skadoodle played up to his potential at FACEIT, and and they took a map off the best team in the world. They played him in another couple close maps, and it blows my mind that they fucked up this hard.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta play devil's advocate to make this interesting, though. So you brought up a couple of things that, the only way I see this team working out is if blank, and then you name something. But I almost wonder if maybe we should put a little bit more weight on some of those things, because it almost seemed like you kind of brushed them off it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying that because maybe that's the one thing that could actually happen. But there are a couple of very real things that could actually improve in this team because of Daze leaving. And like I said, this is going to be terrible, but I got to do it to make this conversation more interesting. So
you don't have to do it.
I'm doing it.
You don't have to.
I'm going in. If I get flacked for it, oh well. But I want to have a debate about it, so let's do it. Because I agree with you 100% basically, but I just want to make this interesting. So here we go. So you brought up the fact that Daze's attitude, if some people weren't liking it, maybe it was causing a bad team environment, and thus maybe it was causing some players to be uncomfortable and thus not perform to their potential. You mentioned Skadoodle. I would 100% agree with that. I think that there have been times that I've witnessed personally where someone like Daze or Steel really cracked down on Skadoodle for doing something, and he was like just mentally out of it for the rest of the game, caused no further impact, and he just fell off. Like he was done for the match at that point after he got like rattled or yelled at or whatever. So I've seen that guy completely shut down before because of that. And I mean, you can't do that. Like Scott's one of your best players. He's your impact opera. He needs to be at 100% or as close to it as possible throughout the entire tournament. So if you shut him down mentally like that, that does kind of suck, and that hurts the team overall. But I would go even further than that and say that also mentally shuts down Swag. Swag doesn't like to handle that type of attitude either. He gets mentally shut out of it and out of the game as well in situations like that. And AZK is probably the same way. Though all three of those guys are very passive, quiet personalities. And if you crack down on them with a stern whip or whatever, they're going to be mentally out of it going forward. So like, while dazed brings a great, brilliant mind to the game, and he's very skilled, and he's an awesome guy, and he really helps your team, if he's bringing down three of your best players with his attitude, like, that causes three individual performances to plummet. So that can cause some issues with the team's performance, right?
I think the biggest attitude issues they probably had, and Days even alluded to it when he talked about this after being cut, was more his interaction with Steel, causing some friction. And even outside that, yeah, he's a hard guy to play with apparently, but he brings so much more to the team that they either need to grow the fuck up and talk to him and tell him what they do and don't like and tell him to stop being like that, and like give him a chance to improve. Or
do you not think they did that though? I mean, they've been playing with the guy for like over a year. You don't think hasn't come up before?
I think they were playing with him long enough before Steel joined the team, and it didn't seem to be an issue because they won an ESCA LAN with Days without Steel.
I disagree. It was an issue. Like Adren and Anger spoke about it after they left the team way back when.
At a certain point, going into picking Dazed up, they knew that. That's been Dazed's reputation since he was in Area 51.
Right, but they didn't care. They just wanted to win at that point. But I think eventually, as you play
and you
with
should
it for
still
so long,
want to win.
Yeah,
and you should still be mentally strong enough as a professional Counter-Strike player, competitor at these events to not get so to not be so mentally weak that one of his comments just kind of sends you into a tailspin. Now, obviously, he shouldn't be saying that, but you do need to be mentally strong enough to handle that. And they should have known, and they should have, regardless of what it is, he's the best strat caller. He got you 2 championships. He got you to a semifinals a finals at FACEIT. Like, all these good things he's done, like, just to work out an issue like that, it's just not, they don't even become close to equal. Like, the negative does not even come close to the positive he brings to that team.
So do you think the positives he brings to that team really outweighs the fact that he might, through his attitude, bring down 3 of his best players individually, like skill-wise or performance-wise in a match?
I think AZK is experienced enough, and I've never seen a game where AZK really seemed mentally out of it. Skadoodle, yeah, we've seen that, and but part of that too is we've seen Skadoodle underperform plenty of times without even being mentally, even before Days joined the team, he was underperforming compared to what we saw of him online. So, he's got issues outside of just an offhand comment by your in-game leader.
What about with Swag?
Swag, I haven't played with Swag enough. I don't know, mentally, I think Swag's position on these maps sometimes just strikes me as that shouldn't affect him. The only thing that's really going to affect Swag is when his teammates aren't getting kills, because he does play that little lurker, off roll position on the other side of the map, and he can't really be effective in taking advantage of rotations and taking advantage of flanking opportunities if his teammates aren't getting kills. So maybe by extension, if Skadoodle goes on tilt because of it and he can't get the kills, but it just doesn't matter. You can try and find these reasons, but it was just terrible.
It was. I'm just trying to make it a bit more interesting by trying to bring in maybe the other side of the story. Here's my other question on why I can somewhat see it is, do you think that maybe Swag and the other guys who ever made the decision, I guess it was Swag, AZK, and Skadoodle, had to have made the decision together. All 3 of them, Skadoodle's the leader of the team technically, so they had to have made this call together as a unit of 3 to get rid of these 2 guys. Do you think that there was a fear they felt like they weren't going to be able to get rid of Steel, only, like Daze and Steel were a package, and so thus they had to get rid of Daze because otherwise they wouldn't be able to get rid of Steel? Or do you think
No.
no, that they could have just gotten rid of Steel and Daze would have sucked it up and it would have been fine?
I mean, yeah, maybe they might have thought about it, but I mean, if you really want to remove Steel and keep Daze, you talk to Daze,
And you figure it
and
out. I get what you're saying.
yeah, like you go straight to Dazed, and I'm sure in that situation, like Daze still has drive, Dave still has motivation, Dave still wanted to be on the team and compete professionally. I'm sure if it came to it and they were like, listen, it's going to be Steel's gone or you're both gone. We want you to stay, but you need to pick. I'm 100% certain he would have said, fine, Steel's gone, I'll stay.
I think you're somewhat right, but I just know that when Daze commented on this after the fact, like he had this stream after the fact where he answered a bunch of questions, and he basically said that he was pretty adamant about trying to keep Steel around because they were showing progress. Because Steel wanted to quit, and he was like, "No, Steel, please don't quit. Like we're showing progress. I don't want this roster to shake up. I want us to, keep this in the long haul. We're making strides. Like we need to keep this together." Do you think that maybe that mentality, like the rest of the team was like, "No, man, like you're wrong. Like Steel does need to go," and like Daze wouldn't want to give it up. I don't know. Like that, I'm just trying to
I
figure
mean,
if that's
it's the
maybe
same.
part of
It's the
it.
same situation. They would have just kind of dazed and been like, "Listen, dude, we know you want to keep everyone, but we can't play with Steel anymore."
And you think that would have worked out?
Yeah,
Okay, so let's get to the final thought of this, which is I just basically took 2 minutes or so earlier to talk about why I think Desi was a good decision and why I think it makes sense to make a gamble on him and how that same gamble worked out in a player like Shroud for Cloud9. So maybe you can work again with Desi, who performed about the same as Shroud back in the day, though in a different role, which could make things a little bit harder in Europe then because he has a maybe more difficult role. But with Nitro, I don't get it, man. Like, is this just a case of we there's no one else we can pick up like for a fifth, and maybe they didn't think this whole thing
no,
through
they tried
because
out. They played with some other guys to
yeah,
try
I
him
know
out
they
for that
tried out
position.
Freakazoid and Tarek and some other guys, but I think out of all those people, the only person that you probably could depend on the frag for you in the LAN environment was probably Freakazoid. But they decided to go with Nitro, who, I mean, I guess he's almost in the same boat as Desi, but I feel like Desi has shown even stronger performances online, and he's actually did like okay at a big LAN at ESCA LAN, whereas I've never like I'm sure Nitro's played some smaller LANs like SoCal and stuff like that, I think, but outside of that, I mean, do you think he's like let's just say it wasn't Days that you were going to bring Nitro in for? Like let's say Desi was off the was not an option, right? Let's just say Desi doesn't exist, okay? So you drop Steel, right? And you have to pick up a fifth and like Nitro's name comes up. Do you really think that Nitro has shown enough potential like Desi has to be like worth the gamble for a team like this?
Uh, no, but I think. I mean, I don't know what the. To be honest with you, and once again, this isn't a bash against Nitro, but I haven't seen him play enough tournaments. And it's not that I don't. I've played with him in 10-mans and scrims against him, and he's an effective fragger, and got a good rifle, and he plays aggressive. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is just kind of like even Desi, like you said, is a little bit of a gamble. Despite him showing good performance at that ESCA land, he is a bit of a gamble, and Nitro's an even bigger one.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's also just on top of that. That's why this is just so mind-bogglingly stupid of them to drop Days, is because even beyond the gamble on his skill level and his ability to perform, at DreamHack on a stage against the best teams in the world, is they're also on top of that losing all their tactical and strategic organization and just everything. And it's just like all of that together.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. But I will add one more variable to this that we haven't actually talked about yet, because I don't know how much of weight it plays. Basically, is they picked up Irakanji as a coach. Does this have any substantial effect, like going forward? Do you think for this team? I know a lot of people have started turning the coaches, like Nip. With PETA. I'm not sure how much of an impact he has in that team, but that's one of the biggest coaches probably right now. I know Titan had like a coach. I think they still do have a coach now. Like
They
one of
still
the
do.
yeah, they picked up like a new one recently actually from one of the other French teams I think. So that they have it. Cloud9 has a
I
manager,
mean,
not really a coach. But do
why
you think it?
Irakanji?
Why?
Like that's what I don't get. You want me to say it has it? Like I don't. No, it doesn't make sense to me either. He played one season of Invite in CS:GO, and he did really good because he had an ex cheater who may or may not have been cheating during that season. Shroud, who at the time was just on fire online, and desi, who was just kind of coming into his own. And I don't think strategically he was doing anything that amazing. He had Miniker dropping 23 to 30 frags a game. He had desi dropping 15 to 20. He had Shroud dropping 25 to 30 kills a game, and it's you know getting those frags makes the strategic job much easier. And
Well, couldn't you say the same thing about Swag and Skadoodle had the potential to pull off those big number frags and AZK, like, as
no,
well?
because those are the players who are going against the best teams in the world. These guys are playing online against, third tier North American teams. It's just kind of different. And what you saw when they got to ESCA land, they just got crushed by everybody.
They only played Nip and Navi.
Okay, well they still got crushed.
True, but I
But
mean, it's not like they had a
I
shot
mean,
at a tier two
I
European
got
team
crushed by
or
Nip. I got crushed by
yeah.
Nip at Iron
So
Gaming as well, so I understand that. But when you have like when we went and got crushed by Nip at Iron Gaming, we didn't have players online who were dropping 30 kills a match. We we were bad strategically, and we just kind of did bad against Nip in that particular match, and they just stomped us. But you look at this team, like what did they ever was strategically? Like I just don't understand like why they thought that Irakanji was going to be this mastermind
well,
that could play
here's the thing,
spades.
man. Because like I get what you're saying, and it makes like logical sense and everything. But because I want you to battle this because there is this very very strong perspective from like the community at large that outside of say Dazed, which is gone, so you don't have him, and then like Sean Garrett, who's obvious with Cloud9, that Urakanji was actually the next big brilliant mind in a like tactics or whatever for CS. And I'm sure he was that like in 1.6 maybe, but in CS:GO like I mean, like he said, I mean, he didn't really do that well at a big land, but I would contend he didn't have like the best opportunity because he had to play against like two of the top four teams in the whole world. So, I mean, so my point is this perception of Hirakanji as this mastermind, like outside of Sean Gares and Dace, is completely off? Like he adds no value, or
I think so personally. Um,
what would have been a better option then, like for a coach if they were going to go? Because I think a lot of teams are going to start going to um, this coach like movement. So who could have been better?
Dazed.
Listen, man, like obviously, but you got to give me
Um,
something because that's obviously not an
this
option.
is one of the major issues in North American Counter Strike right now. Is there's no good in-game leaders. There's not enough players who really understand how the game is played on a team-wide level. Um,
Coach Moses? Question mark.
that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But
Coach Warden.
like, I don't think that Irakanji, like, that's just kind of blown out of proportion. I think from his reputation at 1.6, and I don't think that he's going to have the effect that they want. I don't think we're going to see it. I'm just curious, like, as a coach, what he's doing for them. Like, is he just kind of watching demos and taking notes and passing them along, or is
Probably.
he sitting in there and he's planning on standing behind him at the event and like calling strats every round? But
He might have
yeah, I mean,
suggestions
to
and
answer your question, I
observations, but
absolutely believe that it's a little blown out of proportion, a little overrated.
so you think he won't
That's
help
not the
at all?
passion, but no, I don't think he will.
Not even a
I
smidgen.
don't think there's any help for this team at these upcoming events. I think they're just going to get crushed. I mean, they might beat some North American teams at ESCA LAN. Drew Prank winner, they're going to go out in groups. ESCA LAN, they could beat a North American team, but they're going to get beat by all the Euros, obviously.
Except for maybe like Mouse Sports. I think Mouse Sports they could probably beat them, but the other three teams probably not.
Yeah, that's
That's what I
possible.
meant. Um, but you're saying Irakanji literally adds zero value, like his paycheck is worthless,
I mean, I'm
worthless
never
investment.
gonna say zero because even him just watching a demo of
Hmm.
Fnatic and being like, okay, they really like this push, and when they do this push, this is where the players are generally positioned. Or if you see this flash, someone's gonna peek here, or someone's gonna be playing behind this box. This is how they like to defend this area, and like that can be helpful. So it's never gonna be zero. Do I think he's going to give enough value to be worth? I don't know if he's getting paid, but if he's getting paid, I don't think he's going to give enough value for a paycheck of anything substantial. And I don't think he would give any value that would warrant a plane ticket to Sweden and a hotel room and food. Like, I just don't think he's going to do enough to warrant any of that.
Right, and I mean, and you really don't think AZK as an in-game leader has any real chance of being successful?
I mean,
or would he need more time?
If you gave AZK time, maybe, but like I said, he's just not. He doesn't have that like one thing you can say about Dazed, um, that like we always say his personality is like his negative, and it is in some ways, but also it's also one of his positives as an in-game leader. Sometimes like
Hmm.
when you're building this team up to be good, you need an in-game leader who's going to be really strong, and you need four people to be like, okay, maybe we don't agree with the in-game leader, but we're going to do what he says, because if not, he's going to freak the fuck out on us. And like enough times of going through that, and once you start buying into it and keep doing it, like you're going to find ways to make it work. And that's when an in-game leader really can start having a great effect. And um, I think AZK just doesn't have that ability, especially in just 3 weeks, to like get his players disciplined enough to do what he wants. Especially when you consider with Desi and Nitro, who are two more inexperienced players, they're going to be wanting, you know, one of the biggest struggles that these teams will have is these Europeans at these events like they're just going to start taking fights and out aiming people and just being super aggressive, and they're going to make you prove that you can defeat them in those 50-50 battles before they start giving you any respect. So it's kind of like you're playing two different games when you're like the underdog American team going into these events. You know, it's happened at every international event I've gone to. Is just, you know, especially with Nip at Iron Gaming, they were just peaking everything, and we couldn't beat them. And there, it's like, why stop? And against Navi did the same thing. They would just peek down on us, and we couldn't beat them for a while. And then we figured it out, and then we beat it, and then we brought it back, and then they started to respect us, and they started to run strats. So then instead of getting used to all this over crazy aggression, you kind of have to get used to playing against strats all over again. And I don't think that iBUYPOWER with this new roster and the time they have is going to be disciplined. And coordinated enough to kind of defeat that early aggression. They're not going to be able to get to that second stage of actually, you know, playing, you know, a tactical game of Counter Strike. I think they're just going to get crushed.
I think we'll just leave it at that then for iBUYPOWER. I think we've pretty much talked it out and pretty much have a similar conclusion to what we think's happened there and what their potential is going forward. So yeah, I guess we'll just leave it at that. So next question then about rosters is we've obviously started to see this other kind of team form, like with CVOP placement, with Dave Steele, TCK, Monty, also known as Neil. And then they have like Mo and Frost like kind of rotating as their opera. They have like a six-man roster kind of deal going on. But I think Mo has actually played with them a little bit more with CVO, but obviously they can't use him for ESCA because he's banned. Uh, does this team, you think, have potential, maybe even more so than iBUYPOWER going down the line? Maybe they're going to be the next big NA team, or
Honestly, it is my nightmare in Counter Strike to have to play on the same team as Steel, Dazed, and Mo all on one squad. I just think that would be the most stressful scrim practice matches of my life. But that being said, if they can find a way to work together and like, you know, they have that pass together, if they can get if they can make that work, I mean, obviously they have potential in North America. You know, North America is not good. We have one good team right now, and there's it's wide open for another team to just show that dedication and to kind of step it up and build themselves to that top level. And I'm not going to say they can't be it because they have all the talent in the world to do it, and they have all the experience to do it. And whatever, you know, with Mo, you know, his whole cheating thing, like whatever you want to say about that, I personally just don't forgive it generally ever. But um, he is talented and he is good and he can play well on land.
so let me ask you this then. Let's say they do have potential, right? And then you have Cloud9, and you still can't completely cut out iBUYPOWER. Maybe internationally, you can write them off as probably not going to be able to do anything against Europeans, like especially top level Europeans. But you know, within the NA scene. So has this maybe overall helped out the NA scene because it's spread out the talent and now produced maybe more teams that have potential than what we had before, or they were just kind of stuck on two teams. That's all we had, and now we have like this third team that could actually bring some
No,
potential. So no.
no, because yeah, great. Instead of having two top tier teams who can compete across the world, we now have one top team that can compete across the world, and we have what like four, five teams that can compete with other North American teams. So no, I mean that no, because they've spread out the talent so much that like no one's gonna get good enough to be able to compete. Like I mean, I'm not going to say no one can ever get good enough, but we see these same players who have been in these top three, four, or I mean, like third through fifth in North America. We've seen these same players on these teams for like seasons and years now, and they're not making any progress.
Right.
And that
Here's
just
what.
comes back to having in-game leader. They play the game wrong, and
Yeah.
then without an in-game leader, they're not going to make that jump.
Here's my point I would make is like I think you're right, but at the same time, before we had Cloud9 and iBUYPOWER, right? And there was literally no other team name that we could probably come up with that we thought would actually stand a chance against like any European teams, right? But now, I mean, while iBUYPOWER probably isn't a great contender, I think they can still compete with European teams, some of them at least, like maybe some of like the outside the top 8. And then I think this new Steel Days roster, if it pans out, could too. So now we have like, in my opinion, 3 teams that might actually be able to play against Europeans instead of only 2.
Yeah, but I mean, before that's even going to
But are they
matter,
going to get
you need.
results? Yeah, that's the different. That's
Well,
a different
there's
story.
that, and they also need a sponsor to be able to travel to international events. So I mean, it's not good enough to just have North American teams who can compete with Europeans but can't travel to Europe.
I think that'll be resolved,
Okay,
but we'll see.
let's hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope so. All right, so now let's move on to Cloud9. And basically, we've already talked about iBUYPOWER. We talked about like their FACEIT and the ESWC experiences as we kind of discussed their roster changes. So now we're going to talk about Cloud9 and what happened with them at FACEIT and ESWC, and then we'll kind of touch on the boot camp process and what we've seen thus far since they started their boot camp process. And that'll be pretty much the biggest topic we'll have left. And then other than that, we'll bring up a couple of really small things, talk on them very briefly. Then we might do some viewer questions if we have time. But with Cloud9, at FACEIT and ESWC, they got eliminated in groups in both tournaments. In FACEIT, to me, it actually did hold some water because I mean they lost LDLC both maps pretty much outright, and they split maps with Virtus Pro. So like in a sense, I felt like they kind of earned their elimination, so to speak, in the sense that they only won 1 map out of 4, so you can't really expect to advance off something like that. Like you can't rely on a tiebreaker, you know what I mean? But when you look at ESWC, they went 4-1 in group play and still didn't advance. To which I would say, what the actual fuck? Like, how can you lose 1 out of 5 and oh, your tournament's freaking over? Gotta have fun, boys. Like, enjoy the venue. Like, that's tough, man. Like, that's real tough. And so, what I would say is this, is I'm sure there's some people out there who are like, oh, man, well, Cloud9, they got eliminated in groups, and so they're on a downward spiral. They're probably not going to do anything in DreamHack Winter either, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, while you could make that point about FACEIT probably, I would say when it comes to ESWC, that event should hold literally 0 weight in your mind about Cloud9's potential. What do you think?
I mean, I'm not going to say it's not going to hold any weight, but I mean, it's very unfortunate for them. I think they deserved to a certain. I mean, the format kind of screwed them. You're right, but still, I mean, when you think about it, going into that last map, all they had to do was get 10 rounds, and it just kind of. I mean, I want to say they only had one. Like, I mean, even Sean tweeted out they only had one actually bad half of Counter Strike during that group stage, and
Mm-hmm.
that's all it took for them to get eliminated.
Yep.
That being said, that bad half came when they knew they only needed 10 rounds. And to lose the way they did and not get those 10 rounds kind of, I don't know, it just kind of made me feel like they didn't deserve it. Like, you only need 10 rounds and you start CT Inferno. Um, and, shit happens in those matches. But as if you're gonna be a top team in the world, um, you can't shit the bed like that when the heat's on. You just can't. And on top of that, they had that one match where they were up like what was it, like 15 to something. They went for a knife, and the guy killed like all 5 of them and aced them, and they ended up losing like 5 more rounds after that. Now that didn't play any
And
effect of
yeah,
their round differential,
exactly.
but I mean that's just kind of a glimpse you see. Like, why are you doing that? You're at like a major tournament. Like, stop fucking around.
Oh man, I think you're putting way too much on that.
No, because that's just a glimpse into the mindset. Like, you don't do that. You don't do that at all. and that was pretty disappointing to me because they are a team I
But you've
root
even
for, and they're a
seen
team.
teams like Fnatic do that. Like JW does that stupid stuff too sometimes, but they're still the best team in the world. I don't think that
You're right,
means
but I don't
anything.
agree with
Yeah, I
JW
mean, I
doing
get
it.
your point. Like you should be taking it seriously the whole
when
way through.
when
But
Cloud9 starts winning tournament after tournament after tournament, I will give them the same breaks that I give Fnatic and JW.
I get
But
your point.
like you just
But
can't. Like you need to be focused. You need to be disciplined throughout all these tournaments. Like and you saw, like that's just look at it. They're not focused and they're not disciplined in that match. And they're maybe they go into this match and they're like thinking, oh, we only need 10 rounds, blah blah blah, just laughing it off. And they're not as focused as they probably should have been. That's like a very possible thing. And they just got shit on, and then you see it. So it's just they. I think Cloud9 has showed a lot of their issues of this tournament. A lot of them.
um, like I said, to me, the getting eliminated from ESWC groups does not necessarily bother me very much in the sense that to me it doesn't mean to me like, oh, that means they're gonna like really suck at DreamHack Winter now. They couldn't even get out of groups at ESWC. Like I don't have that mentality. I mean, they beat Virtus Pro at ESWC. They also beat them one map at FACEIT, and Virtus Pro is considered one of the top 4 teams in the world, and they're competing with them actually pretty well. I mean, I guess here's my thing. Like, losing FACEIT hurt, obviously, but they split maps with Virtus Pro, a top 4 team in the world, and then they lost to LDLC, which is the number 2 team in the world. So I think that they're still safely a top 8 team, in my opinion. Maybe, like, obviously towards the bottom, like maybe rank number 8. And so with that said, I think they still have the potential to do well at DreamHack Winter. And the only point I want to make is when we reflect on ESWC and we reflect on FACEIT, I don't think that that should have dropped Cloud9's ranking in your head. Like, I think they should probably still be sitting at exactly the same spot they were before, like after Cologne. So my point is they obviously didn't do anything to like raise themselves up the ranks and be considered higher than what they were when they came out of Cologne, but I don't think they've done anything to make you want to put them down a notch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, for me, even from Cologne, um, it's weird because they are the best team in more. Like I think I talked about this a little bit in the last one. I don't like they didn't change their ranking to me because of those two events. I just don't have them probably nearly as high as a lot of other Americans do
Where do you have them? Because I have them at like number 8, probably, in the world.
in the world.
Yeah, I would say like right at number 8.
I'm not sure I would put them at 8. I think I might have them at like 10th or something.
What? Okay, let's just do our rankings then really quick. So here's what I
Oh,
got.
jeez, you can do that to me, huh?
Well, because I'm really curious now, like who you would put ahead of Cloud9 to bounce them all
I'm
the way
not
to
gonna. Okay,
10.
I'm not gonna rank them one through whatever because
Well,
I
I
haven't even
think
thought of.
it's like Fnatic and LDLC are obviously at the very, very top,
Yep,
right?
Titan.
And then you have no, I would say that Fnatic and LDLC are just kind of up there by themselves right now, and everyone else just comes
Okay,
below
great.
that. And
All right.
then the people who come below that, in my opinion, are teams like Virtus Pro, who's consistently kind of placing third, fourth at most of the events they're attending now. So by sake of consistency, they're probably somewhere in the top 4. Navi, in my opinion, has a talent to be considered probably a top 4 team. So that's where I have those 2 teams. Then below that tier, I have everyone else, and there is where I would put teams like Titan, where I would put teams like, God, who else would I really put there? I mean, like consistency wise,
Dignitas.
Hellraisers. Well, Dignitas, yes, yeah, you're right. Dignitas would be right there next to Titan, in my opinion. So that's 6 teams that we've named, right? Outside of that, like besides Hellraisers, who sometimes shows potential to be like in that top 8, I got
Here's
nobody else that I would put ahead of Cloud9 at that point, like consistency wise. Consistent, whatever. You get my point. I don't see anybody else that's like consistently performing well enough to where I would say, yeah, they're knocking Cloud9 to like rank 10 because these guys are clearly like 7th, 8th place in the world.
here's some of the bigger issues with Cloud9 that prevents me from really having like a lot of confidence in placing them higher. Is I mean, like I said during the last hype, they rely a lot on these hero plays. Um, and those have bailed him out in so many past matches. The last major that let him get out of group stage was just massive hero plays that don't happen nearly often enough, and you can't rely on those. Um, on top of that, you look at how I think Hiko's getting off a stretch of some of the worst Counter Strike Go tournaments he's ever played in, and he hasn't been playing particularly good in Face It at or was it Face It at their boot camp or was it? that little no the Case King
Yeah,
tournament.
we're gonna
I
talk
don't
about
think
that in a second, actually.
yeah,
So I
he
don't want to
couldn't
go
play
there
that
quite
great
yet.
in that. Well, I'm not going to go into that, but just like their players are just underperforming so
Hmm.
much, and I think Shroud and Sean were their two best players on this boot camp in this Case King, and I think
Yeah, yeah.
nothing is just far too inconsistent right now. So when like it's really unfair because we want to be like, okay, when these guys are always underperforming and when they hit their stride, they're like top five. But you can say that about any team in this
Hmm.
professional Counter Strike. Any team whose player just catches fire and goes nuts, they're going to play like a top five team because it just makes the game that much easier. But Cloud9's players aren't hitting
Right.
those peaks at
Hmm.
all.
Well, some people in chat are saying Nip, and like obviously I didn't say Nip, and that was my mistake. But I named 6 teams that were ahead of Cloud9, and so Nip would just be the 7th team ahead of Cloud9, which still puts Cloud9 at number 8. Because I honestly don't think you can say Hellraisers has been consistent enough in their placings at majors and stuff like that to be ahead of Cloud9 in the world rankings. So that's where I'm at on that. And all the other names people are saying in chat, I said all those names ahead of Cloud9. So I think Cloud9's like safely like 8th in my opinion. But let's talk about this Cloud9 bootcamp because we've already kind of reflected on what we think about their FACEIT and ESWC performances. So let's see what we can kind of tease out of where Cloud9 stands now as they've been bootcamping. So obviously, we all now know, or maybe you didn't, so I'll inform you that Sean Garrett is now back to being the main in-game leader for this team. I honestly think he started it like during FACEIT and ESWC, and now it's just carried over to the boot camp. So at some point before they came to Europe, they decided to switch back to Sean Garrett being the in-game leader. Not only that, but I think Sean Garrett's he obviously gave up the primary opping role for a bit because like except for maps like Dust 2, he would still be the primary op, but on all other maps like Simphis kind of picked it up. Well, I think we've kind of seen Sean Garrett's revert back a bit to being more of a primary op. I mean, I think he still trades off with Simphis, so maybe that's not even a point of discussion, but he's back to in-game leader, which is a point of discussion. Um, how do you think this affects the team with Sean coming back to being the in-game leader of the team?
I think it's good for them. Uh, I think it's going to be good for them to have a little bit more structure um, in how they play as a team and their strategies and everything than Semphis brought to it. And I mean, like I said, I respect the work that Sean puts in even outside of playing so much. And um, we've always seen Sean talk about how they saw something in a demo that they were able to manipulate. And I think that's really, really good that he's back at it. And he's also playing great. He played great through Case King. So um, I'm
Hmm.
happy with it. I think you just saw. I think Semphis's calling is just too kind of puggish, and
Right.
I think Lurpus put it well when he was like, that it did great from a couple events, and
Can't
I just don't
last.
think it can last
Yeah.
over. Yeah.
So
Um,
here's my question about Sean Garrett, though. Like, so obviously we think it's better that he's back to in-game leading. He's very good at it. He's great with his executions. He's good with his micromanagement of players, and so obviously that brings a new tactical level back to Cloud9 that they were maybe lacking before with Simphis as a caller. So that we'll put that in the pro category, that the plus sign or whatever. But when you talk about fragging wise, here's my concern and fear is that when Sean was the primary for the team, people always pointed to inconsistency issues with his ability to be able to frag with the rest of the team when he was the primary op on the team. He since then like jacked up his mouse sensitivity. He went to more of a rifler role where he'd pick up the op like only on certain maps or in certain situations, but he really was more of a rifler. He had a higher sense, and ever since then the dude has been fragging pretty damn well. You look at Cologne, you look at Sivoland, you look at some of those events, and he was fragging much better. And people were like, "Oh, Sean's back, man. He's back. He's fragging. He's back." Right? And I'm almost concerned that if he reverts back to like his old role, like back with the older complexity days and stuff like that, that it will have an effect to where it also reverts back his fragging ability lower than what it is right now, what we saw in recent events. Is that a concern? Like, no, you think it's fine? What do you think?
that he reverts back to his less fragging.
Yes.
I mean, it's always a concern. I don't think it's specific. I don't think it's a concern specific to Sean. I think who they really need to worry about is Hiko right now. Um, I just thought he was pretty underwhelming at FACEIT tournament and at ESWC, and then through this Case King. And we all know he has the ability, but when it comes to Sean specifically, I mean, he's not the one they're expecting to drop. 20 to
I
25
understand.
frags, you
Yeah,
know?
I get you. But it's nice to have, and he has been able
Yeah,
to do that
absolutely.
recently, and I'm scared that, and that's helped him out a lot. And so I'm worried
Right.
that if he reverts back, that they lose that tool, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you're always worried that some guy is not going to perform to where, I mean, perform well or get the kills. You know, you're
Right.
always worried about that, no matter who it is. But um, for if, I'm not going to worry about Sean's frags. I'm going to worry about
Okay.
Hiko's frags, and I think they need to change the way they use Hiko is used in that team.
Yeah,
I think
us get
that's
on to that. So, what we've actually seen here recently with caseking is we've got. I mean, it's hard to go off online results to really know how a team's going to do at DreamHack Winter, obviously. But what we can at least draw from caseking is we can start to notice some of the things that Cloud9 has actually changed on the team. We've already talked about how Sean Gare's role has went back to in-game leader. He's picked up the op a bit more. That's one of the elements that we've kind of discussed. But we also can tell that they've definitely changed up their CT sides, and the biggest example would be on Inferno. This is a map that when Sean and or Nothing were interviewed at ESWC, they're like, this used to be one of our staple maps. We're starting to suck on it, so either we need to refigure it out or we need to start vetoing it. And so it seems like they've tried to start refiguring it out, so to speak, and they've completely changed up their CT side. What I mean by that is in the past you used to see like Hiko kind of be the anchor at the B-bomb site and Sean was like the rotator. You'd have Nothing kind of patrolling the mid in an aggressive manner, either from truck side or porch, just whatever they were deciding to do with that play. And then you kind of had Shroud was kind of more of an apartments player, maybe helped out at mid, and Simphis was like kind of a mid player with Nothing. But now they have Nothing and Shroud playing B, with Shroud being the anchor at the B-bomb site and Nothing being kind of a rotator. They have Sean Gares more active with an op in middle, and when he can't op, he'll be rifling with Simphis, and Hiko has become kind of more of the apartments player. So, like, they almost switched their anchors on the site. So, like, Shroud used to be the anchor at A, now he's the anchor at B. Hiko is now anchoring a different site. He used to be the anchor at Banana, now he's the anchor at A. It, it didn't really work out that well whenever they played against Epsilon in caseking. Like, they really struggled on their CT sides. They wound up beating Epsilon eventually, but they struggled on their CT side a lot, actually.
yeah.
What did you think about this tactical change that they've made on CT side? Oh,
I
yeah,
actually like it a lot.
even though it
And
didn't work.
yeah, because I mean, after just changing it, there's always going to be
Hmm.
you want that not to work now versus at DreamHack
Yeah,
you want to get beat so that you can figure out how to not get beat.
right.
Um, and so I don't mind them struggling in the with that setup, but I really like how they've changed around on Nothing. Also, I noticed on Dust 2 they moved him away from mid and they put him at long,
Yep.
and I think that's a really good idea because Jordan, when he's in those positions, like when he's on the guard in the rap side on Inferno, he's in those positions a lot of time alone. And Jordan likes to be aggressive, and he likes to mess with smokes and stuff like that. And he likes to spray, and he likes to try and find his frags. And a lot of times, um, when I said they got beat after needing those 10 rounds on Inferno against LDLC to get knocked out, Jordan was playing that rap side by himself, and they hit that rap so hard, and Jordan was cut out of a position a couple times and just kind of died. And when you put a player like that into those defensive positions where the goal isn't necessarily to get the frags, but you do need to live. Like you like it's better to get one kill and live than it is to get, you know, a kill or like two kills and die sometimes. And I don't think Jordan's that kind of player. So when they switch him over to the B rotator, it lets him kind of rotate and get really aggressive into Carnage, and he's like really good when shit hits the fan and he's got some teammates to work with and he can make something happen. But playing him alone and in positions where he has that availability to get picked off, I think that just happens to him too often to kind of be able to rely on him there.
Right. So, talking about Nothing a bit more, actually, is we've obviously talked about Nothing's struggles and offline events with his inconsistencies. Like, for example, you'll look at ESEA land where he was an absolute monster against Virtus Pro, and it really helped him out. But then other times he'll be not even really an impact. You look at their recent tour in Europe, and you'll look at FACEIT, and obviously Nothing really struggled at FACEIT. They got eliminated in groups, and so that was another sign of his inconsistency. But, looking at ESWC and then looking at caseking, the dude's been absolutely on fire. Like, all of ESWC pretty much except for the map against LDLC. The other formats he played exceptional, and then he's played absolutely exceptional on all the mats they've played in thus far against Epsilon, Virtus Pro. His rating is really high. So obviously they need nothing to be good, right? And if he's playing poorly, then that obviously hurts the team a lot because they rely on nothing a lot in his aggression on a lot of different scenarios. So, do you think that nothing finally has gotten it down? Do you think he's finally going to be able to consistently perform? Or do you think, no, this is just another wave of positive play and it's eventually going to come back down again?
Uh, I mean, I've got to say it's going to be a wave because that's, you got to go historically. That's what's happened. He's just kind of riding the crest right now.
Right.
Hopefully he didn't, he's not peaking too early with his boot camp. Hopefully he saves some for DreamHack. But um, we all know how good he is and we all know the potential he has. It's just he doesn't consistently meet it, like you said. And so, I mean, I'm not going to say, he's finally there. This is, crashing out
Right.
in
I
group
think
stage,
this
and
is
now this online
finally,
tournament has done it for
yeah, I
me.
think he's finally, like, really taking the time to get serious about the game, though, at this boot camp and with the Cloud9 sponsor acquisition. And prior to that, he really didn't take the time to really just hammer at CS and really grind it out and put hours into it and really work on getting better. And I think now he finally has sat down and done that with this boot camp and since they've got picked up by Cloud9. Do you think that's true? Do you think that holds any weight? No, doesn't matter. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that
no, I mean
observation?
it could, but I mean that's been Jordan's MO forever. Like even Warden and Storm when when I was playing with Elevate with him, they were always telling me Jordan is like the worst teammate when it comes to online practice. He's all there, he's great in boot camps, but online, even when we'd scrim them, there were times we'd wait 15 minutes, 9 people in the server just waiting on Jordan, 20 minutes for Jordan. And that's just kind of him, I guess. But I mean, if it was me, you can't just like keep doing that, Like, great, you're not going to get this month-long boot camp every time you want to go to an event. It just doesn't happen. So to not be dedicated during 60, 70, 80% of the practice that your team has throughout the year, that's just kind of crazy to me.
Right.
Um, but I mean, it's
Maybe
Jordan,
that'll
and
change now,
he
though. I
gets
don't
a
know.
lot of slack because of
Yeah.
his potential, and
Mm-hmm.
because of that potential, teams
Yep.
and his teammates are probably like, okay, we don't really care what he decides to do as long as he's going to drop 60 frags in a best of three against, or 90 frags in a best of three against Virtus Pro again. But it just those kind of things don't happen without that dedication and focus before the event. So yeah, this is probably great for Jordan, but you can't really say that he's there finally. He's going to be consistent because he's never has been.
Right. So far what we talked about looking at Cloud9's boot camp, two things that we've been able to pull from it is obviously they've made adjustments to their CT side with their personnel and where they want to put people. Inferno was an example that we used, but you brought up Dust 2 as well.
Mhm.
That was the only maps we really got to see. Well, we're going to talk about some other maps we got to see because so the points we talked about is change personnel on CT side or changing our CT philosophy a bit. Second thing is at least for now, nothing has shown more consistency in his play, but who knows if that's going to last or not. So that's kind of like a neutral thing. Next thing on the list for me is it seems as if they are trying their best to increase their map pool. And what I mean by that is the maps that they actually stand a chance on against other teams that they don't have, like, because here's the thing. In the past, like, anytime a North American team went into an event where they played against Europeans, Mirage was pretty much always an insta-veto, like, we're not playing Mirage, like, we don't play it, and Europeans do insta-ban, like, it was just guaranteed. And then, obviously, at the latest majors, like Cobblestone for them was an instant ban in a lot of situations, and Overpass is probably an instant ban in a lot of situations as well. And in a situation where you have three maps you want to basically just insta ban, you're kind of screwed because with the new veto system, you only really get to ban one before the other team gets to pick one. So you can only get rid of one of those three maps basically guaranteed, which means that you're going to be left at least playing one of the three maps that you normally would want to insta ban, which obviously is like almost an auto loss, right? So we see at this boot camp that, from what I can tell, they've put some work into Overpass based on how I saw them play it against Virtus Pro. I mean, they lost,
Yep.
but you could tell that they had something. Like, they had some, like,
Yeah,
nifty pop flashes and smoke. So they've been looking at that map. So I feel like they're trying to implement well, my point is I think that,
you have to learn
yeah.
Overpass. You have to.
So they're at least they're showing signs that they are, which means to me that hopefully that won't be like an auto ban for them. Like, they'll actually be able to maybe rely on Overpass against some teams as like an actual option to play and do well on. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to learn Overpass. We see how much the Europeans are playing it in their leagues and how much they're not afraid of it anymore. Um, And yeah, it's I mean you're right. Just to go into a tournament and have to ban like two maps automatically simply because like if they got to practice it in North America, like and they kept trying to decided they wanted to keep banning them, like fine, but they had to ban them just because they don't get to practice them here
Right.
because no one else does. So that's just kind of like walking into a tournament with on a crutch already. But
Hmm.
so I've actually thought they looked pretty good on Overpass. I think the reason that Virtus Pro beat him was just I think it was Bialy was just winning
Bialy
some
was
crazy
absolutely going
clutches, and
bonkers. Yeah, he
and
was
he
clutching
won
everything.
a lot of rounds that he shouldn't win. But
Yep.
even saying that, like you still, it's not necessarily even the maps. I think they have some. Um, this seems to be like the case with most North American teams to me, and it's something I've thought about for a while. Is just North American teams at times are so afraid when they're playing CT. They're so afraid to let an opposing team plant the bomb. Um, I've seen so many like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 situations where a player just gets so nervous that they're going to plant the bomb that he tries to make this hero play to get like a kill or two or prevent the plant and ends up just dying and leaving in his teammates in a 2-on-3 with the bomb planted anyways. And like you just see just kind of these hero plays just pop out, these as Eagle likes to the big dick plays, where you don't actually have a big dick when you make them. They're just kind of you just kind of flop over and just do absolutely nothing. So it's just but yeah, I mean it's good they're starting to practice it, but um, they need to shore up some of those like late game situationals and everything like that. It's just endemic of North Americans.
Right. The other map example I was going to use was actually Mirage because we got to see them play it against Planet Key as well as Mouse Sports. And while I think that Mirage would still probably be a map they would want to ban against certain teams, like at DreamHack Winter, I actually, based on what I saw from their T side, they actually had like a better sense of how they wanted to execute. It seemed like to me, their T sides were really strong actually in both games that I saw. Their CT sides, obviously, like we're not CT side a map anyway, so your CT sides are going to be pretty solid. But their T sides are actually somewhat impressive in the tactics they were actually kind of implementing. Not that you have to do necessarily anything really special on a Mirage. Like to hit A, you'd have your three basic smokes basically, and you can kind of execute off of that. And but the way they were implementing mid into their A attacks and stuff like that, like a lot of teams will just kind of like leave mid alone almost, and maybe have like a lurker there or like one guy coming underpass to try to catch rotators. But their main emphasis is still on like Palace and A ramp. Whereas you see some teams do implement mid, and North American teams now it seems like Cloud9 is kind of doing it too. So maybe they have got Mirage up to a level to where they can actually use it against European teams that are having to auto ban it like they've had to do in the past. So that was like another example of it seems as if did this boot camp. While I'm sure they're trying to hone in on their fundamentals and make sure that they make the necessary adjustments on the maps that they are historically strong on to remain strong on them, they definitely are spending some time working on these maps they don't get to practice much in North America to try to implement them into their map pool, basically.
Right, and I actually, I mean, I agree. From what I've seen by them, they've looked like they're doing really well on certain maps that you don't normally see them on, and they're gonna need them for sure. They're definitely gonna need them. Especially, I think Overpass is the big one. I
Mm.
think I'd rather them get better on Overpass than Mirage,
Yeah, I agree.
because I think Europeans are really starting to love that map.
Yep, I 100% agree with you there. So basically, Cloud9 as like the players on the team, not as an organization, because Cloud9's only been backing them for this one major, or well, the Cologne and now this one. But in the past, it always seems like boot camps would benefit this core of players, whereas it almost seems like it did nothing for iBUYPOWER. They're still eliminating groups no matter what. But like complexity or whatever would go from like doing really like inconsistent online in North American events like ESCA, but then they would go to Europe, they get like a solid week boot camp, and all of a sudden they're like placing top 4 at the major, or they're placing top 8, but like really close sets, like they're really on the verge of making a semifinal. So and this boot camp has been really long, much longer than any other boot camp they've ever had before as a team, and so obviously because of like if you look at the history, boot camps have helped them. So obviously this boot camp I think will have helped them a lot, especially in fixing problems they think they have on certain maps like Inferno, as well as increasing their what they know and understand about some of the maps that they would auto ban in the past, like Overpass, like Mirage. So obviously, if we look at this boot camp probably has been a huge plus for the team as a whole. I don't really see how you can say it was a negative on the team, but has it been enough of an impact, do you think, on the team for them to maybe make a better run at this event than in past events?
I mean, it's probably the best chance to have major improvements before an event they'll ever get. Just a month overseas playing against the best teams in the world, like that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I obviously can't say quite yet. I mean, we'll see after DreamHack, but um, I think I've thought they've looked good as a team, and outside of some individual performances here and there, and some situational mistakes, they've looked pretty. Some of the individual performances have just been a little grim, and those mistakes just need to get shorn up to be able to beat consistently these best teams they're facing at these majors. But as a team, I really like the changes to CT. I really like how they're using nothing, and I really want to see them to get Hiko more involved on their T sides. I want him to be um, way more involved early on in rounds. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like how he's still like lurking and coming up the rear and winning these clutches. I would rather, with how good he is at fragging, he's one of the best just flat out fraggers in North America, and I want to see him start helping them with some entries and help taking bomb sites.
Yeah, actually, that's another topic I was bringing up about Cloud9 is there's been a lot of I've seen like some little like posts here and there, which I never thought I'd see, which is that some people are saying that they think Hiko's in a slump and like he's not performing as well as he used to. He used to be like their go-to guy, like their number one player. He was like the one North American player that was considered maybe a top player in the world, and he was obviously their number one player. A lot of people have either said Hiko was in a slump and like he's not performing very well, or experts like Lurpus have said maybe like Hiko is still good, maybe he's not in a slump, but they need to start basing their team around somebody else besides Hiko, like a Shroud or something like that. So, do you feel that they can't rely on Hiko anymore as much as they used to, or something? Like, what do you think about this talk?
I actually want them to rely on Hiko more, and just in a different way, because obviously Shroud is helping out a lot, and they should keep doing whatever they're doing with Shroud because it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, I don't think they ever necessarily like relied is such a weird way. I'm not sure the best word to use it because he wasn't so crucial to like what they were doing on T sides. They just relied on him to clean up every clutch situation they needed. And he
Mm-hmm.
did for so long. He was winning like 1-on-3s, 1-on-4s, 1-on-2s,
Yep.
making huge plays in 2-on-2s and 2-on-3s, and that just doesn't happen
Mm-hmm.
over a long period of time. So they relied on him to win these unbelievable situations. But now that like it's just not going to happen every time. That magic's not going to be around forever. And now they need to find another way to rely on him because I think he's just much better. He could be so much better used. He has so much skill and so much talent and just so much ability to just get the needed kills that to just leave him out of the action for so long until he needs to clutch something is just kind of a sin.
Yeah, I get you there. So I would agree. And I think that some people are saying they need to base team around Shroud is like a bit of an overstatement because while Shroud is really good, I think that like how they're using him now is almost perfect because it's not like he's their number one star fragger. He's top fragging every game or something like that. Like he's usually like second on the team in most situations, or maybe even third, like on the scoreboard when it comes to fragging. So
Mhm.
I think that they're using like I don't know. Here's my like, and this is not me trying to criticize Lurpus or whatever, but my question would be is when you say you want them to base the team around Shroud, what do you mean? Because I don't understand how you want them to use Shroud more than they already are. Like, Shroud's not the type of guy you want to send him to a bomb site first to get entry frags or something like that. He's like your second or third guy you want in the site. That way he has the information on where people are at and he can go ahead and lay down the headshot because he is a pretty consistent rifler. You don't want him to be the one leading the charge. I think you want him as your number two, number three guy into a site. So and he's not an aggressive player by nature. He loves to be really passive. He loves to be slow and methodical. He loves to jiggle peek the shit out of stuff until he gets the information on where someone is. I'm not saying he's like too scared to go into a bomb site and try to open things up, but he loves to be more passive. He loves to jiggle peek corners. He loves to get info, and I just don't see what more you want them to do with this guy than what they're already doing. I guess is my thing.
Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. I mean, I don't know about basing the team around him, but I think it's just kind of. I know what Lurpus's tweet when he referenced that. I think it's just more. Um,
Like you
you
can't
either
rely on nothing, so you need to rely on
Yeah,
Shroud.
you can't rely on nothing, and Semphis has outside of some really good matches, he's never been that, just
Mhm.
heavy fragger. And, with Hiko, how they use him so much in the late round, I think Lurpus was just kind of like, if they want to keep playing like this, then they need Shroud to be doing a lot more.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying instead of basing it around Shroud, I think they just need to change how Hiko is being used. I think that'd be a much better option because um, I think putting nothing Jordan into those roles that Hiko's in right now might do a lot better for them. To be honest with you, I think if Jordan could find a way to be a little bit of a lurker and stop trying to like do some of these crazy entry frags we see him going for a lot, I think that could be huge.
Right. So we've kind of, I think, talked about most of the elements we want to talk about as far as Cloud9's boot camp, and it just transitions into how well do we think they're going to do now with this boot camp, and this just ties straight into maybe some DreamHack winner group predictions that we're going to do, Moses. So maybe we can go ahead and do that now.
Yeah,
I think that this is a pretty damn clear cut, and to me, it's actually convenient how they listed the teams like on the HLTV news post because my predictions literally would follow this to a T on how they're. I know they weren't listed this way on purpose, probably, but if I'm looking at all these groups, the way they're listed in order, like on the HLTV post, is exactly how I think the rankings for each group will go, 100%. Like, so let me give you an example. For Group A,
I know what you mean. That's probably fair. Yeah.
so Group A, I think Fnatic obviously tops that group, no question about it. Like, name a map they're weak on you think you can take them on right now in a best of one. It's really hard to come up with one. Maybe like Dust 2 would be like the only chance I think that like a Cloud9 or something would have against Fnatic. Like,
No,
yeah,
I don't think Cloud9 has a chance against Fnatic.
I mean, I don't either, but I'm just saying that there is a map. There's not very many maps out there you could even say, oh, if they do have a chance, this would be the map it would be on. There's not very many options there.
Yeah, no, there's
So,
not.
maybe if Cloud9 gets Fnatic on Dust 2, a miracle happens. But outside of that, man, like Fnatic definitely tops that group, 100%, no questions asked. This is the only group where it gets a little bit dicey on finding number 2, in my opinion, though, because while I would predict Cloud9 to take second in the group, in my opinion, they're gonna have to beat Hellraisers twice to do it, because they're gonna have to beat them in like the initial, and then they're gonna have to beat them again once they lose to Fnatic in the upper bracket or whatever, and so they're gonna have to beat Hellraisers twice basically if they want to get through this group, in my opinion, and so.
That's fair. Yep, I would agree with that.
I mean, Hellraisers isn't very consistent, but I mean, they're still good, and they still can beat you in best of ones here and there. So, I think that here's the thing. I think Fnatic takes number 1 in the group. There's no doubt about it. I would be really shocked. I would be highly shocked if anyone takes number 1 away from Fnatic in that group. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if Hellraisers eliminates Cloud9 or something like that. But I do think
No,
Cloud9
I wouldn't
takes number.
either.
But I think Cloud9 is the favorite to take number 2 in the group.
Yeah, I think they're definitely favored over Hellraisers. I still think Hellraisers is just kind of too inconsistent and streaky,
Mm-hmm.
even with Simple coming in and just playing so amazing for them. But yeah, they're still Cloud9 is definitely the favorite, and I would hope that Cloud9
Yeah,
would
I
be able
do.
to beat Hellraisers.
Of course. So Group A was actually the hardest one in that concern because I think Hellraisers actually has a chance to beat Cloud9, but Cloud9 I think has second seed favorite. Ugh. Let's move on to Group B, where this is real easy to me. Titan and Dignitas will advance from this group. Maybe the order is swapped a bit on who actually takes 1 and 2, but I'm going to say Titan probably is the favorite to take the group, with Dignitas being at number 2. They'll probably have to play iBUYPOWER twice to get to number 2. I don't see any reason why the current iBUYPOWER lineup would be able to upset Dignitas. I know
No,
they.
no chance.
I mean, I know that they upset Dignitas or whatever at like FACEIT with their former lineup that actually showed potential. I know Dignitas has at times struggled, like losing the 3D Max and eliminating from groups in that one event or something like that. They're not like. Here's the thing: like it used to be a given that Dignitas would make it to a semifinal and at least place top 4, whereas now it's actually not anymore. Like they're more of like the 5th to 8th type status now. But to me, that's still good enough to beat iBUYPOWER in their current state with virtually little prep in almost a completely new
Do
dynamic.
we do we know who's on Penta? Because that would be really awesome if Penta just
No way.
if
I,
you don't think so?
I don't think so. I don't know. Like whenever I hear German teams or like German
Wouldn't
lineups,
surprise me.
it's always like Planet Key Dynamics' names come up, and then it used to be that one other team, but then I know like they had to like get rid of one of their players because of a cheating thing or something like that.
Yep.
Was it Planet Key Dynamics that got rid of a player because of cheating in one event? Wait, hold on a second. I'm a little bit confused now. Actually,
He got. I think he was
there
the
was
one that
one
got
guy.
back banned.
I know in like one of the qualifiers, it was one of the other German guys. Like Klee wasn't playing with them though. Who was Klee playing with whenever they got banned or whatever? I know
Not sure,
Klee
honestly.
was playing. Yeah, he was playing with Panicky Dynamics. Klee was.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, like, but so yeah, I don't really know anything about Penta Esports. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not that versed in European CS, but I don't really know much about Penta. I don't see them making out of the group though. I can tell you that.
Oh no, they're not gonna get out of the group. I
Yeah,
just
but
would love to see him beat iBUYPOWER. I think that'd be
yeah.
amazing.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know anything about Penta basically. Like I've heard like alternates name thrown around. I think they
I
had
mean,
a band play recently too.
it doesn't matter. That group is clearly going to Titan and Dignitas. No other team
Yeah.
has a chance of even winning a match.
Yeah, dude. Like it would take a freaking Christmas miracle for iBUYPOWER to get out of that group. There's not a group I would put them in where I think they even if I swap them around somewhere, I couldn't see them getting out of any of these groups basically. But whatever, we'll leave that alone. So Group C is LDLC, NIP, Planet Key Dynamics, ESC Gaming. Didn't ESC Gaming just recently lose a player because of cheating too?
It's possible.
Could have swore somebody from that team got banned before this event for cheating.
Um,
Which is ridiculous in itself.
He's the player. ESC is the team that had the player that Lurpus's article kind of pointed out that he had sources that told him that he was cheating.
I thought he already got removed from an event or something like that, or removed from the team, or was it something else?
So you're thinking something else, I believe.
Maybe. I don't know. Either way.
Yeah, well, they had two players in this article that Lurpus wrote. One that they said had sources that Rollin from ESC was cheating, and the other that said that Manice was behind some DDoSing issues that was hitting the Polish scene.
Yeah. Like I've heard of some different match fixing things that were there as well. So yeah. But anyway, when we look at the group and we think who's going to advance, like obviously LDLC is like the clear number 2 team in the world right now. I think they advance out of Group C probably as the number 1 seed. While NIP has struggled and they've made their roster change with Michael Laley coming in for Fifth Flare, which I think has probably helped them, like in a skill setting, having a stronger opper on the team. But as far as implementing him into team strategy and things like that, I'm not sure where they're at with that yet. We've only seen them compete in a couple of online events, and they've had inconsistent results, which is exactly what they had before they picked up Michael Laley. So I don't really know what to think about NIP right now, but I think with the way the group is situated, they should at least make it out of groups over Planet Key Dynamics and ESC Gaming.
Absolutely.
So I would say NIP, LDLC NIP come out 1-2. I think maybe there's a chance NIP somehow. I don't see it, but maybe there's like I wouldn't be like, oh my goodness, no way NIP took one in that group. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like the only thing that would shock me in this event is if iBUYPOWER somehow gets out of groups. Like I think Hellraisers has a chance to advance out of Group A, whereas I think every other group's pretty clear cut. I'm not going to be completely shocked.
Yeah,
I would be shocked if NIP got eliminated in group play. Basically, I think they should be able to get past these other 2 teams in their group. Then for Group D, it's Virtus Pro, Navi, Epsilon, MyXMG. So this is the only other situation where I think you could see some type of upset. So I would pick Virtus Pro and Navi to get out of this group. Not really sure who would be 1 or 2. I think they're both about the same in my opinion, skill level wise. They're both like they're 3rd, 4th to me, like in their world rankings. So I don't really know who has the edge there to take number 1. But I think the one, like as like Hellraisers has a chance to cause an upset in Group A, maybe there is like this small chance where Epsilon could cause an upset in Group D. If like Scream's on fire or something like that. So,
here's the thing about Navi, and Navi's always a weird team to me because they always place so high in these events. And I got to play them at Iron Gaming, and we took them to we lost 14-16, and I've never been like super impressed by them, but they always do so well at these events. And I feel like at some point I'm going to have to just buy into them. But yeah, I feel that Epsilon, you know, if a lot of things go their way and they have some players catch fire and win some crucial rounds, they could upset Navi. But I mean, I would say that Navi's definitely favored.
Yeah. See, the only thing is, I feel like this is almost one of the weakest majors talent pool wise that we've seen as far as like who actually made it to the event, like Bravado, Penta, Planet Key Dynamics, ESC, MyXMG.
I don't know if it's the weakest, but I think that there's no, like every other major, there's been like this group of death.
Yeah, there's none of that.
There's
like,
not
all
a
of them
group
are
of
clear
death
cut,
here.
pretty much.
I wouldn't say clear cut,
Except
but I
for the
mean
Group
like
A with Hellraisers, and then like maybe a Miracle
but
for
like
Exxon
these
in
group
Group
of
D.
deaths
But
we've seen in the past have been,
yeah,
like three teams that you could easily see making to like the
right,
semis. Like,
right, right, right.
Very Games has been in a lot of the group of deaths and the old Very Games, obviously. And but this one doesn't really have like this massive group of death of teams that you could
Hmm.
expect. And then definitely even with, Group B could have been a massive group of death if iBUYPOWER, had kept their eye, if they
Right,
hadn't
right,
had
right.
if they hadn't gutted themselves. But
Mm. So yeah, that's pretty much the major topics. If any viewers have questions, we'll answer those really quickly. I'm listening in chat for yeah, I'm just like look at chat for questions. But the only other thing I'll talk about while we're waiting for questions is because I know one of these questions is going to be coming. But obviously MLG Aspen's coming up. This is great news for more NA events for CS:GO. Do you have any thoughts other than that? Obviously, it's like a positive. We have more events for CS:GO and MLG stepping into it's pretty big. So, do you have any other additional reflections on that topic though? Because that's obviously like pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, I think it's super cool. I don't think they've released enough information to really have a major opinion on it. We'll need to see like how it runs and who they're inviting and everything like that. I'm just hoping that if they're going to have qualifiers, they're not online.
Yes,
But outside of
I'm sure
that,
they will though.
cool. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, that's I don't really have enough information out enough, but it's freaking sweet.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
All right. So Moses, gonna take. Um, First question we got from chat, and I knew this one was coming. I actually already had it on my document because I knew someone was going to ask about it because it's obviously like a hot topic right now. That's the CZ, baby. The CZ.
Oh, good.
Awesome. Ready to unload? Here we go. I'm going to give my spill about it. Here's the deal. The gun should have never came into the game in the first place, like some people have said, but it did. So now we have to deal with it because of skins. You can't remove the gun from the game. Never going to happen. No way. So basically, you know what's funny, Moses, is I was thinking about it. Doesn't it just blow your mind that this gun used to be $300? Like, doesn't it just make your head implode when you think about, like, yeah, it sucks now, but man, you remember when that thing was even cheaper than it is? Like, it actually blows your mind to think about that, doesn't it?
Oh my God, I spent too much time having to play against it. My mind's been
It's
blown
just
far
numbed.
too much.
Anyway, so here's the point: is the nerf that Valve did to the gun did absolutely nothing. We literally saw no change in usage at the pro level of the CZ with the $200 increase. It was literally like putting a damp band-aid on like a cut that deserves stitches or something. Like I don't really know how else to put it. Like it was just literally like the worst nerf ever. And I get that Valve probably has a mentality of like, well, we don't want to make crazy drastic changes, so we'll just make slow progressive changes until the problem's fixed instead of making a drastic change that might be overkill or something like that. And I can kind of see that like caution. But the bottom line is that the nerf that took place was not enough. At $500, the gun still gets used way too much. It's not a risk anymore to even buy the gun. Like, what's the point of ecoing when you can buy a CZ for $500 that has a 50% win rate, maybe even higher than that? I don't know. The point is like, save rounds used to be a situation where you would want to save, or if you were not going to, it was actually a risk to do so that you could be punished for. Now you're really not punished for buying a CZ, even if you lose. Like, if you just happen to get a kill, you only lost $200 because you get your your $300 kill reward. So it's like you literally, even at worst, should probably only lose $200 out of buying it, and you have a really good chance to win with it. So, I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. And here's the thing: I find it funny that like people are now just making a big thing out of it because it's been a big deal ever since the gun came out, and people were kind of quiet for a while, and then now all of a sudden we're about to approach a major, and now everybody wants to put their 2 cents in and make it a big deal again. It's never not been a big deal. It's always been a huge problem. And my solution would be either A, you make it even more expensive. I'm talking like $1,200+ make it actually a risk to buy, like it actually hurts your economy to buy it if you lose. Or you got to do something to make it less effective, like at its base level, meaning like you have to nerf the rate of fire or nerf the damage it does, or I don't know, but like if you don't want to change the gun itself, then you have to make it more expensive. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that like Valve refuses to make this change before the major. Like, don't let this ruin another tournament. go ahead and increase the price of the gun now. If you want to relook at the gun later about how you want it to work mechanically with fire rate or damage, fine, do that. Okay, like you need time to think that out. But it should take zero thought at this point to go ahead and at least increase the price of the gun to fix it now. That's where I'm at.
I don't know if I would change it before the major. I don't think you're giving your teams enough time. I mean, the tournament's next weekend. Like,
well, I think they should have already made the change that they were going to do. Now,
okay.
now you're right. It is too late. But 2 weeks ago, they could have done it, and it would have been in time for the major and been fine.
I think probably the best solution I've seen was Lurpus made a really good idea of putting it in a submachine gun slot, SMG slot, and raising it to like $1,000, so that you can still buy it on save rounds, but you can't get armor with it. And then on top of that, I mean, the biggest issue about it is we see opper like JW, when he gets an op and a CZ, he's just like unstoppable.
Yeah, because the one weakness an opper has is getting rushed, and guess what? Now you have a CZ where when you rush,
right, you got a hand cannon. But,
yeah.
So I mean, that would solve both issues because you can't have two primary weapons. So you can't have a CZ and an op at the same time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know if I necessarily mind how you can use it. I mean, it's a little crazy, but you definitely need to increase the price to make it more of a risk if you're going to keep it like that.
Yeah, I think it's either like SMG replacement for the UMP at $1,200, or if you want to really keep it in the pistol field, you can do that. Maybe keep it as a replacement for the 5.7 Tech 9, but just make it like way more money. Because I mean, it's not like it's impossible to make a price difference on a slot. Like the two M4s are different prices at the same slot, so you can make the gun price different even if it's in the same slot as another gun or whatever that's a lesser price. So I mean, you can do it, but I mean, yeah, it has to be at least be more money. And I think like Fifth Laren actually highlighted the mentality problem with Valve actually, is that when they're thinking about making tweaks, they're really looking at their overall data. And like, unfortunately for us, like the professional level of play is a lower percentage of that data. So, which is ridiculous because you should cater from the top down. Like when Blizzard makes like competitive changes to the races like in the game, it is geared 100% towards like the pro level of play, not to the other 95% of the community that plays the game on the ladder or whatever. And CS should really be the same way. Like you should make the changes to the pro level. Yeah, like there's more, like I get you want to try to affect the greatest number of people, like the greater population of players, because that's the ones that are like fueling your game, because they're buying skins, they're they're playing the game, they're bringing in new players, whatever. But you need to cater, because the game is competitive in nature, and you need to make the competitive changes in a way that benefits the pro scene, and everyone else just has to get used to it. Like if you want to cater it to casuals, then do it in casual mode. Like when it comes to competitive level play, the changes need to be geared towards the highest level of play. So even though the pros are a small percentage, you need to cater to that. That's my thought.
I mean, I think we'll see changes after DreamHack. I think there's no chance that Valve doesn't tweak it a little bit after DreamHack, but
I'm just scared it'll be another minor change that doesn't have a big enough effect, is my worry, because that's what happened last time.
Yeah, but I mean, they do that so that they don't nerf it into oblivion.
Yeah, right.
They want these things to get used, so they don't want to go too far. It's kind of like when you cut your hair. You cut little first type thing, so you don't just ruin it on one go and you can't go back.
Is that a stab at me? Wait.
No,
okay.
Not
Are you sure?
You took that very personally.
Well,
so
there was a bunch of bullcut stuff in chat, so I thought you were playing the chat. I didn't know. We have two more really good questions, and then I think I'll cut it at that because this thing's already almost 2 hours, which I was aiming for an hour and a half. I missed it again. I always miss my goal. So 2 really good questions actually, and then we'll sign off, Moses. All right. So the first question is Dust Moret. This is from Reprise. He says, if Sean Garris retires, quits, gets cut, blah blah blah, do you think Skadoodle or JDM could be a viable replacement, or do you think Simpus could pick up the op and they could grab swag again? So that's a really specific question. I'm gonna make this more broad, and because me and Moses actually talked about this on Steam, I think yesterday, didn't we? How would we make an NA super team or whatever? How would we make, like, let's say, because Cloud9 right now could be the NA super team. We have to see how they do. But let's say Cloud9's exhausted all their resources. They've plateaued. They're not going to get any better. than what they are with the current roster they have, so they have to make a roster change because they've just plateaued. They're not going anywhere. So how would you fix the team to make them a super team that can go further than top 8? And I'll propose what I think would be best, and then Moses will make his proposal on what he thinks will be best. So my proposal is this. I think that the biggest impact that Sean Gares has on the team is his in-game leading ability and his ability to make mid-round adjustments, his ability to micromanage his players. He really is a brilliant tactician, and I think that that is his biggest contribution to the team. Now, recently, we actually have seen him fragging really damn well, and people are like, oh, Sean's back, he's fragging real well, he's back. If it stays that way, cool, then you don't need to do anything with him. But if at whatever reason you feel that your team is plateaued, and you see like Sean once again kind of being inconsistent and not really contributing fragging-wise, then maybe you take Sean and you put him in a coaching role, like a really hands-on coaching role where he's actually like calling strats and adjustments and stuff like that, but he's not actually in the server playing. And I think that it would increase that level of him to do that because now he can just focus on what everyone's doing and not focus on himself and his own fragging and really even micromanage even more than he probably already does and make it even better maybe. So you put him at a coaching role, and then you take Simphis and you put him back in the in-game leading role, but you have like Sean Gares breathing over him, like really being the shot caller. So I think you do that. So that opens up one roster spot. And I think that if you're Cloud9, you either have to have one or two different mentalities, and depending on your mentality, depends on how you change things up. So obviously, with what I've just said, Cloud9 has never really had like a crazy impact opper. They've never really relied on the op very much. Like, yeah, they have someone toting it around, but it's not like it's like their main strategic element to their team or something. So you either change that and you get an impact opper, like a Skadoodle or like a JDM, who I don't know, JDM's obviously not at the same level as Skadoodle. Don't, like, I get where you're going. Like, you're like, whoa, wait, no, don't put those two names together. The only reason why I named JDM is because I understand that him and Simphis are actually really good friends, and I'm sure, like, on a friendship and team chemistry level, that would actually work out maybe, whereas Skadoodle's, like, really quiet and passive. Maybe that personality wouldn't work out. So they need, like, pick up an impact opper if you want, right? But if you want to stick with your team dynamic where you don't really have one and you focus more on like everyone rifling, then yeah, bring swag back or pick up somebody like an AZK. One of the two, it doesn't matter. Now here's the other drastic change you could even add to that. So I think that at the base level that should be the guaranteed thing, okay? So if you wanted to make another drastic change to the team, this is going to catch me a shit ton of flack, but I'm ready. If nothing continues to be as inconsistent as he has been, you can't let this guy live off his potential forever. Like, eventually, you might have to let him go if he never actually hits his peak. And so at that point, that opens up a second roster slot, in which case you could pick up Swag and AZK, or you could pick up, like, Swag and Skadoodle, if you want to go with that opera thing I talked about, or whatever. And I think that's like your Cloud9 super team. That's where I'm at. What do you think? What would you do?
I would probably. I mean, if I don't, I would want Sean to be on that team as the caller.
Okay.
I would put. I'd probably take. If I had to just do one improvement to Cloud9, it would be to take nothing out and give him Skadoodle or Swag. Probably Skadoodle, and I would leave Sean to rifle. I think that would be a pretty strong team because I think Skadoodle is going to be a big key to, or could be a big key to any North American team really challenging, because we see every one of these teams that are competing these days has a pretty dominant opper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the big pieces that Cloud9's missing, definitely. But I don't think I would remove Sean. I would remove Jordan and I would remove Simphis before I remove Sean, to be honest with you.
I can see why you would say nothing, because I get the inconsistency thing, and a lot of people have brought that up, but I'm surprised you would take Simphis out before Sean. But I guess you're just really dead set on Sean Gares being an in-game leader that's in the game with the team and not like from a coaching perspective.
Well, I'm a player. I put a lot on the in-game leaders, and I put a lot of all my success in Counter-Strike has came from some pretty good in-game leaders.
But can he not do that from outside the server, like as a coach?
Not as effectively in game, and I'm not sure at these events when we see like Pyth behind Nip. I'm not sure if they're actually calling strats or if they're just kind of giving suggestions.
It looked like Pito was at the last major.
Like I don't know if they. but I don't know if they're like allowed to have like
Yeah.
mid-round comms.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know all
Right.
the rules behind it, but
Yeah. That's
um,
true.
and I say that I have a lot of respect for Simphus as a player, and it kind of surprised me one day when I came to that realization that I would take Sean over him as well. Um, but I like you look at these North American teams, man, and it's just so scary that there's no talented in-game leaders out there outside of um, Sean and Days. And actually, talented might not be the right word, but there's no in-game leader at their level, like even
Yeah.
close to their levels.
Yeah.
And that's what's kind of scary for the teams who are looking like
Yeah.
all these other teams that are looking to take that next step, and they're like, man, maybe we need an opper, maybe we need a better rifler, maybe we need an entry fragger. I'm just like, just go find a fucking in-game leader, like someone you're just gonna like be dead set on listening to, someone who's gonna teach you, just someone that you're gonna play the way he wants you to play it, and it's such a hard role to fill, and it just sucks that um, we had this vacuum created by
Hmm.
CGS and all of our top players and top tacticians and strategic players kind of left the game after that and just left this community devoid of them.
Yep.
But um,
Well,
just a big need for in-game leaders everywhere you look.
yeah. So my thing with Sean, like suggestion was under the impression that he would actually be able to con with the team the whole time. Like if he can't, then like yeah, I want to leave him in as the in-game leader and maybe just swap out nothing like you said. So I don't know. It depends, but that's what I
Well,
would do. But I think you should just leave Cloud9 as it is for now, obviously, and just let's see how they can
yeah,
do now that they have a boot
yeah,
camp behind
definitely.
them.
I was just
They
this
could
is
be
the
where they need to
hypothetical
be at
question.
this point. Like they could be it. Like this might be the moment for them. Who knows? Like
It's just weird. It'd be weird having your caller be the coach behind you because there
yeah.
are just kind of feelings and intuitions that you get competing and playing round after round, actually being in the shit and getting shot at and everything. There's just those intuitions that come to you that I'm not sure that you would get the same ideas and feelings if you were just kind of even if you had that bird's eye view of all five screens. I just don't think you would necessarily get to experience the necessary emotions to call like a counter strat or to kind of figure out a problem.
Yeah. So the next question we actually had, this is the final one before I turn this thing off, is do we think that we will ever see like an EG maybe picked up Torqued or something like that? Will we ever see a big org pick up Torqued so we have like three big teams in North America that have big sponsor backing besides just iBUYPOWER and Cloud9? The answer to that question is if Mo is a part of that team, then if you are a professional organization that does not want to tarnish your reputation, you have to kind of step back and really think about whether or not you want to pick up a team that Mo is part of. So I think that with that said, and this is not me trying to be like a Mo basher or anything like that, because he's obviously a talented player, but I think that from like a business and professional perspective, when you have to, communicate with your sponsors and live up to their standards, it could be a conflict of interest to pick up a Mo who was banned for cheating, who is still technically banned for cheating from ESEA. Some organizations may look at that and be like, I don't want any part of that. Like, that's a really sticky situation. Now, granted, you've seen companies still sponsor Mo's stream, like Digital Storm and stuff like that, so apparently some of these companies don't care about that. And so if an EG or something like that can look past that, then yeah, maybe the big sponsor will pick them up, and I think they deserve it. But I think that some sponsors may be weary of picking up that team because of that reputation thing. What do you think, Moses?
I think, I mean, personally, I'm not gonna forgive it, but as a sponsor, I mean, I could see reasons they would, but I think more than anything, even past the cheating thing, I think it would just be having to clean up his stream, just like so much immaturity and like just
Mm-hmm.
swears and whatever it might be, like some of those clips you see of him and TM going at each other, and it's
Right.
just that's something that would EG as the company they are would just scare them away from it. I'm not even sure that EG would try and touch it, to be honest with you, but
Yeah, I think like because here's the thing, like the Cloud9 players are like perfect poster boys for Cloud9. Like they're really nice guys. They pretty much act professional on their streams. Like obviously they're like funny and stuff like that, but like nothing like you hand that guy a microphone and your PR is probably going through the roof. Like I mean, they just do really well for like representing the brand that they're a part of.
yeah,
But
they
when you look,
absolutely do.
but when you look at people like Steel or Mo, like while they probably can act professional when need be, they're still probably going to say something stupid at some point that's going to piss off your sponsors. Like, I don't know how iBUYPOWER tolerated some of the stuff that Steele would say on stream or in interviews or whatever. Like, I'm sure they had to have gotten on to him at some point, like, hey, you really shouldn't say that. Um, and I mean, EG has in the past gotten rid of players that they're very loyal to because of things that they said publicly that they thought affected their reputation. And so, for me, if they're going to do that with people they have around for a while, why would you pick up a brand new team that you know has that risk? Like, I don't know. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I thought actually Steele did a great job in interviews and everything, but yeah, on his personal stream,
His
I'm not
personal stream is
sure.
what I meant, yeah.
I'm not sure how much say that's probably be something that they'd have to negotiate in a contract. How much say they'd have on the
Yeah,
content of his personal stream.
right. So my point is I think it's definitely possible. If it's not EG, I think there is probably some big org out there that will consider picking up that roster. But the other problem is like I think they're going to be ESCA Premier, so they won't even be eligible for Invite Land, which is the biggest NA event they can be a part of. They will probably be able to do CVOP. They have MLG. Maybe I don't know how they'll get overseas. Depends on if they can win some online qualifiers, since apparently that's the route we're going, which sucks. Like we need land qualifiers for majors, so we'll just have to see, man. But yeah, I think that a big org will pick up Tort. I just don't know who it'll be. Will I be shocked
I
if
mean,
EG
I
picks them
think it's
up?
flat
No.
out too early to say that, but I mean, if they stick together and they're doing well, it's very
Yeah.
possible. I think Dazed and Steele are both players who
Hmm.
know how to do that, know and get involved, and they have a lot of
Yeah.
experience with it. So that's very possible.
Other than that, there's no other team in NA I see right now that EG would pick up outside of buying out iBUYPOWER or Cloud9 or something. There's no other roster out there that looks like an EG team would want to pick them up. Could be
I mean,
wrong.
I buy Power is not even a team EG would want to pick up.
Yeah, so I just don't see it. There's no other because EG wants to pick up a team that's going to be the best in the world or contend for best in the world, or they're not going to pick up some team that can barely make it internationally at all. Which means like some of these like teams that IG could easily get, like Denial, like Netco guys, like some of these other teams. Like yeah, those teams show potential, but EG doesn't pick up teams based on potential. They pick up teams based on like a track record of success. Like they bought the Complexity Call of Duty team because that team was the #1 team in the world. They go after teams who are already at the top level. They don't pick up teams that they think they can grow into the top. Like they want someone who's already up there. And so that's why I highly doubt they would pick up any other NA roster other than the two already big sponsored teams or maybe Torque down the line. So that's kind of how I'll leave it.
Yeah, it's fair.
I mean, like I said, I think mousepads, they have, like some of these teams like people are talking about in chat, they have potential to be very good, but until they prove themselves and until they hit that top level, an EG's probably not interested. They want to pick up a team that's top right off the bat, I feel like, rather than pick a growing team. That's where I'm at. But that's it, man. Moses, talking to someone? Well, Moses, I think we're actually going to sign out now, man. So you ready to just say your goodbyes? Any final thoughts, comments?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
no more final comments. Just thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, I'm sure
It's,
I'll have you on again at some point in the future for another episode. I'm trying to think about what I want to do for future episodes, and I think I'm trying to interview Cloud9 before DreamHack Winter in a small episode, but I don't know if that'll pan out. I also will likely try to talk to them after DreamHack Winter and before ESA Land to review on DreamHack and preview ESCA Land. I may have you involved in that as well if you want. We'll see. And then from there, I mean, who knows? I think I'm going to try to maybe talk to some of these like other invite teams after ESCA and talk about how they're preparing for the next season of ESCA. Because I know there's like a lot of teams like Area 51 and Netco guides who are making changes, and I want to catch up with those people, but at the right time, like, right before the next season of ESCA starts and stuff like that. So that's probably something in the future as well, but that's pretty much it.
cool.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.
Peace.